Good afternoon and welcome to the officials of the Ministry of Education. Welcome to the members of the media and the public to the 15th public hearing of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee. The Committee on Public Administration and Appropriations has a mandate to consider and report to the House on A, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies to ensure that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. B, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies as it occurs and keeps Parliament informed of how the budget allocation is being implemented. And C, the administration of government agencies to determine hindrances to their efficiency and to make recommendations to the government for improvement of public administration. The purpose of the 15th public meeting of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee for the 11th Parliament is to seek further information on the 2017 expenditure and internal controls of the Ministry of Education as it pertains to the following: accountability and transparency, inventory control, internal audit, subhead 02 goods and services, subhead 03 minor equipment purchases, subhead 04 current transfers and subsidies, subhead 09 development program consolidated fund, and infrastructure development fund. The committee is desirous of hearing from the accounting officer and other key officials of the Ministry of Education to discover the challenges being faced and determine possible solutions to these challenges. The role of the committee is to assist the ministry to achieve efficient delivery of services while ensuring that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. This meeting is being held in public and will be broadcast live on the Parliament's channel, Channel 11, Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. I will now invite the representatives of the Ministry of Education to introduce themselves, and thereafter the members of the committee will introduce themselves. Madam PS.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson, Vice Chairman, and members of the committee. I am Angela Siniswijebe, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Education, and I would invite my officers, if you don't mind, to introduce themselves, starting with Ms. Maraj on the extreme left.
Afternoon, I am Geeta Maraj, Director of Finance and Account, Ministry of Education.
Good afternoon. My name is Wanti Chedi. I'm with the Projects and Program Management Unit of the Ministry of Education.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Shubha Jaisir, Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Education.
Good afternoon. My name is Deputy Ryan Mangal, Acting Director of Finance and Accounts.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Henry David. I'm the Acting Director, Educational Planning.
Good afternoon. My name is Anjani Samaru. I'm the Auditor 3, Internal Audit, Ministry of Education.
Good afternoon. Dr. Gaynell Holdip, Manager, Scholarships and Advanced Training Division.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ingrid Kemchand. I'm acting as the Director of the Curriculum Planning and Development Division.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll ask the members commensurate to my furthest right.
Maxi Kafi, member. Clarence Rambarat, member.
Good afternoon, Ayana Webster Roy, member.
Lakram Bodo, Vice Chairman, good afternoon.
Good evening, good afternoon. Wade Mark, member.
Good afternoon, Alison Bash, member.
And I am Bridget Anisette George, Chairman. Madam PS, I'll invite you to make a brief opening statement if you wish.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Madam Chairperson, Vice Chairman, and distinguished members of the PAAC, the Ministry of Education's original budgetary allocation for fiscal 2017 amounted to a total of 5.8 billion, which was a net decrease of 452.8 million when compared to a 6.2 billion for fiscal 2016. In view of this overall decrease and the decline in revenue earnings, the ministry sought to curtail its activities in keeping with the funds provided and to use innovative means to utilize areas of savings, prioritize projects and programs, and to look inwards at the areas with the potential to derive revenue earnings. However, despite this, the ministry recognized that additional funding was required in order to successfully implement its program for fiscal 2017. So we made various requests and we were given some additional funding in the mid-year review. So we ended up with a total of 108.5 million was redirected to the Ministry of Education to facilitate continued financing in certain areas, and I can list out broadly the areas. We got some additional funds for other minor equipment, ICT and education. Three of our agencies received some additional funding: the Accreditation Council of Trinidad and Tobago, the National Schools Dietary Services Limited, and YTEP, Youth Training and Employment Partnership Program. We also received some additional funding for several junior life centers, several ECCE centers, several high-tech and advanced skills training program, and several human development and skills training program. So basically, we are trying to fit our activities within the funding we have received for 2017.
Thank you very much, Madam PS. And just arising out of your statement that just piqued my interest in terms of the net decrease in allocation, and you're trying ways to fit yourself. You had indicated you tried innovative ways for savings and for revenue generation. And I just wanted to find out a bit about what steps you would have taken with respect to revenue generation.
Well, when we look at our revenue generation, basically it's not very much. It's really what we get from fees for exams. There's a registration fee for persons interested in entering the teaching service. And we have some fees that we receive probably from ECIAF. We may get some other fees elsewhere. So that we try to see how we could increase that, but we really have not been very successful in increasing it, because it depends on, as I say, how many persons registering and on how many persons are registering for exams. So we looked to see what we can do there, but I don't believe we have been very successful in increasing our revenue over the years. We have also been able to get some revenue from refunds from scholars, those scholars who may have breached their contracts. They are required to refund what would have expended to them, so we do get some funds from that area. And maybe overpayments, but that's not revenue per se, but whatever overpayments that we were able to get back from the persons, that we will, that goes in a different fund.
Okay, so basically, therefore, when it comes to revenue generation, could I therefore say that the bulk of what you've got, if at all, would have been really from the fees or the refunds from breaches?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay, all right. So that was a bit of the fixed agenda. It arose from your statement. But in the submission, there is a response where you all indicated that the ministry is guided by the Exchequer and Audit Act and the Ministry of Finance and Control of Accounts directives in ensuring that it has established and maintained an appropriate framework. And therefore, I just wanted you to share a bit with the committee what, therefore, in actuality, your framework looks like, so that one could come independently to this kind of conclusion, that the framework of accountability that exists accords with the directives of the Ministry of Finance and Control of Accounts and with the Exchequer and Audit Act.
Okay, we would have, of course, our internal audit unit, which will deal with looking at our internal controls. And as I said, we have an established internal audit unit. They are required to oversee our systems, raise issues when they conduct their audits, bring it to the attention of the permanent secretary, who will then take action as necessary. If it needs to go further, let's say looks like fraud, which we are not the ones to determine if it is, we would go on to pass it to the police service to treat it as that kind of issue. So we have put in place, we have our internal audit, we have different registers, asset registers, where audit can review to ensure that we are on track with our inventory. We also have registers where we would deal with all our assets, as I said, all our assets.
Systems within the accounting unit.
All right, the actual system within the accounting unit, to make sure we have our balances and all our checks and balances and all the controls necessary. So as far as we see it, we have the accounting unit set up in accordance with the regulations, and we have our internal unit being responsible for overseeing our systems and bring it to attention any issues that might come up.
In terms of measuring for your outcomes, and evaluating your performance, and also demonstrating that you operate in terms of value for money. In your response, you spoke about key performance indicators being set prior to the commencement of any project. Could you say, one, who sets these key performance indicators?
The owner of the project, who would come up with the project in the first place, is required to set these indicators, which of course would be considered by the permanent secretary, and there will be agreement on what would be those performance indicators before the project gets going. And we measure performance by those indicators, whether they are meeting it, whether we're falling short, what might need to be done to get us back on track if we are falling short. So the project owners in the first place would be responsible for developing those indicators and measuring to see if we are on track with that.
So the project owner would not be the Ministry of Education?
But within the Ministry of Education, we may have projects coming from different divisions, and there will be someone like the project lead in that division who would have that responsibility.
And the monitoring and evaluation of these indicators would be done by whom? The project owners, you as the accounting officer? How is that done?
In conjunction, I would say, because they would be able to tell me, give them the reports exactly where we're at, and we measure it against. Now, we have a monitoring and evaluation unit, quite small, I would admit, but whatever assistance is required, we can call on them to assist us with monitoring and evaluating these projects. But basically, it would be the project owner, whichever relevant deputy permanent secretary that might have responsibility for that section, and the permanent secretary.
Okay, and therefore, what then does your monitoring and evaluation unit do on a regular basis, if it's only called in when it's required?
Well, at this point in time, we might have 2 persons, if so many. We have a head. So because of the limited amount of personnel, we really been trying to do our monitoring. Well, the project owners will be doing their monitoring and evaluation pretty much on our own, and we, as I say, call her in if it is necessary. Lisa, could you share any further information on that, please?
The M&E unit will also provide training for different divisions, personnel, so that they will be able to do their monitoring and evaluation, help them to set their performance indicators and so on. And they have done rapid assessments for certain projects, and they continue to provide support throughout the ministry.
All right. Now, you said the unit is only comprised of 2 persons. Are there any plans to expand this unit?
The unit should really be about 8 persons, and we are planning, I've been informed that we're going through a process to recruit around 6 persons to beef up that unit.
All right, so that would be the permanent establishment, the 8 persons?
Contract.
Okay. All right, so in terms of what you've also indicated, that in terms of demonstrating value for money, you use bonded suppliers, you use a 3-code system. Do you utilize the open tender system at all?
In certain circumstances, yes. Sorry, yes. In certain circumstances, yes, we do. For example, like we have to purchase laptops. So we are going out to open tender through Central Tenders Board. We are in the process of trying to get contractors for janitorial and security. So we'll be going out to open tender for those.
Subject to the size.
Basically because of the size and the quantum. Because if it's under $1 million, we may decide to go select. But once it's over the $2 million, certainly we have to go to CTP.
All right, and okay, so that you have a sort of monetary ceiling to determine whether you go open or whether you use the 3-code system. And therefore, how are the suppliers or contractors selected for the 3-code system?
Generally, we would have a listing of, well, it depends on what it is we're trying to acquire. So we may have had over the years persons who would have been involved in providing that service. So we could go with 3, right? Generally, it falls under general administration. That's the area basically. So they would do their research and come up with about 3 persons in the field in that particular area who we can go and ask. We go straight to them and ask for a quotation. We will be very clear on what we require. So all 3 parties will be told exactly what we require and for them to submit a quote.
And are you satisfied that that is a efficient and transparent process from your experience?
Depending on what the goods or service might be. So for example, if you're looking at stationery, you tend to go to some that you would have had experience with over the years. But if it's a new item, something that we would not have had the experience before, you may choose to go out and just ask for more than, we could ask for more than 3, but we need to have at least 3 to be able to do an evaluation. And we would have an evaluation done within the ministry to determine who would offer the service. Usually we go with the lowest quote, but experience, service over the period of time, that kind of thing, reputation in the area, we would look at all of those matters before we decide on which one we're going with.
Okay. All right. Any other member of the committee wishes to ask a question? Yeah? Okay, and I just had then another area of interest, and this is again concerning your process for demonstrating value for money and evaluating performances and so on. You said, you made a distinction between, as you said, general administration and construction projects. And you said that the construction projects, the procurement method is usually utilized through EFCL. And therefore, I wanted to know what was therefore the reporting relationship between the EFCL and you as the accounting officer, or the oversight mechanisms that exist between you, because it will still be you as the accounting officer being the one responsible. How do you exercise oversight, reporting, and the whole delegation process?
Okay. I'm going to use an example, work through with an example. So we have, for example, a school that we need to have some repairs done. We have a division called Education Facilities Planning and Procurement Division, EFPPD. They would do an initial scope of the works, and we would request EFCL to do a proper scope and cost. So we'll indicate exactly, so if it's electrical works need to be done, we have to fix a bathroom door, that kind of thing. EFCL will then, they have a list of approved contractors. They would probably have them in areas. So if a school in Bamboo Village, they would probably look for contractors within that area. They would send out their tenders. They would get, well, they would scope it to the works first, yes? Sorry about that. This works will be scoped by EFCL first. They will send in the bill of quantities back to the ministry. The ministry has a quantity surveyor who would review the bill of quantities submitted by EFCL, determine whether it seems reasonable or not, and put up to the PS or the deputy PS according to the figure for approval of what these costs for these works should be. That information is sent back to EFCL, who would then use that to send out tenders to contractors in the area, and whichever one, I guess, comes in with the figure that is within the figure we determined for them, that contractor would get the award.
Yeah.
When the work is done, EFCL has its own process where they have to go through to determine whether the works were done to satisfaction. They would send in that information to us with an invoice. We would go through and make sure we are satisfied with the works done before it can go forward for payment.
Right. So your satisfaction with the work, is that just limited to whatever report may have been submitted by EFCL, or do you of yourself, meaning your ministry, conduct any sort of site visits of the works?
We have in that division called EFPPD, we have engineering assistants who in the first place would go out to see the schools and see what works required. And that is how the process would start. So when it reaches the point of the invoice coming in, our EAs can go back out and determine whether the work was done as requested and done to standard, and then it is submitted for approval.
All right, thank you. Now, we were just talking about your monitoring and evaluation unit, which is just 2 persons. And in your submission, you had indicated that the ministry was in the process of developing a monitoring and evaluation framework, which is to ensure that value for money exists in all your procurement practices. Could you say how far this framework has been developed?
Madam Chair, I think we are at a point of a draft, which I have not had an opportunity to go through as yet, so we're still at the pretty initial stages in that.
Right. And do you have a sort of time frame? Could we say by start of fiscal 2017, 2018, you would have an approved monitoring and evaluation framework?
I would like to say that, but I cannot say that with 100% certainty, but that is what we would aim for. So that by next fiscal, we should have something in place.
But wouldn't that help in the absence of having a fully established monitoring evaluation?
Yes, ma'am, it would help, but at this point, as I say, it seems to be at the point quite early in the process.
Yes.
So and we really only have 3 months before the end of the financial year. So I'm really hoping that we can bring it forward, accelerate that process, and get something in place for new financial.
Okay, and I will just ask one other question on this so that I can engage my other colleagues in the conversation. As regards, in your submission, you had spoken about the whole sort of oversight of projects, and there were, one of the points were made is that if the ministry was dissatisfied with the rollout of a project, the project would be terminated. And I am curious to find out what were the instances, if you could give some examples of instances when projects were terminated and the basis for which they were terminated.
Madam Chair, I will admit, since I've been in the ministry, other than some construction projects that were terminated even before for lack of performance, offhand I can't come up with a particular project. I don't know if my project... No?
Only under construction.
Now that I'm being informed that it's only those matters, those schools under construction that we may have had terminations.
And that would have been, because you see your submission is dated April 10th, 2017. So I'd expect that the response would be of some sort of recent applicability.
The projects that I know of with the construction, those construction projects, I think terminations would have been done prior.
Through EFCL.
Through EFCL, but prior to, well, let's say this fiscal, because I think most of those things were terminated prior to this fiscal.
All right, so that in this current fiscal, there would not have been any experience with underperforming contractors where you would have had to take any sort of corrective action resulting in termination. Would that be correct?
That would be correct, ma'am.
Okay. And apart from that, would have had any experiences with underperforming contractors, and how you would have dealt with that within this fiscal?
The contractors are really hired through EFCL. The contract is not with the Ministry of Education. So the EFCL would be liaising with us closely on any contractor whose performance might not be as desired. But for this fiscal, I am being informed that none was actually terminated. EFCL would be expected to have discussions, hold discussions with the contractors and see how best they can bring it up to scratch or show some improvement. But for this fiscal, what I'm informed, we have not to my knowledge.
All right. And in terms of just one general question about your budget, and I know that, as you had said, you'd got some money in the mid-year review, but to specific areas. And throughout your submission, there are references to having to reprioritize to allow for monies to be allocated to other areas. Could you, at this stage, give us some insight with respect to areas where monies have been taken from and redirected to other areas?
All right. I know some votes we were short, putting it mildly, but we were quite short in some votes, so we had to do some shifting. So for example, we may...
Some rental and the short-term contract.
Okay. We were short in a particular vote called short-term employment. We had to do some transferring from maybe contract employment as well as rentals. Now, we may have had some savings in rentals because of the move to the new building. So we would anticipate that we wouldn't need to pay rental for some of those buildings for the entire financial year. So we had to do some shifting from rental, maybe some shifting from contract employment because we don't have positions, so we had to go the way of short periods of employment to get the job done. We had to move any for transport. We may have some issues coming up between now and the end of the financial year. Some votes are short.
Yeah.
Which one?
Janitorial.
Okay, yeah.
Security.
Janitorial and security. So we really at the point where we had a discussion this morning, looking within to see where we can transfer funds to meet the expenditure that we expect before the end of financial, because janitorial and security, we really can't afford not to pay our bills. The schools need the security. While we may have had a reduction with the different locations and we don't need security there, but we have more and more schools that we have to provide security for. We have unfinished construction that's being vandalized, so we have to provide security for those schools. So we anticipate that we will be short and will have to find money somewhere within the ministry.
Member Mark?
Yes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to follow up from where the chairman left off. And that has to do, Madam Permanent Secretary, with the recent relocation of the ministry. And given the stringent budgetary conditions that you now find yourself and the ministry, and as you said, you have to find innovative means of surviving in many respects. Could you share with us what kind of anticipated savings you envisage over the period that you have been relocated, and maybe to the end of the fiscal year, September 30th, as it relates to rentals and leasing of private properties that the ministry would have had to engage in, the costs for security and janitorial maintenance, telephone charges, the rationalization of the number of vehicles and vehicle maintenance, electricity bills, and even stationery. Because with you being centralized in one major location at this time on St. Vincent and Edward Streets, maybe you can tell us what kind of savings, cost cutting, reduction in wastage or waste that you anticipate the ministry would experience between the time that you moved into your new premises to the end of the fiscal year. Any anticipation in terms of savings, in value terms, in a quantitative way?
Mr. Mark, I would not have actual figures here today. I may have some, but not all. But certainly, we anticipated savings with electricity because we had several buildings that we were renting. We are now in one location with one electricity bill. We also had the Ministry of Education now is two former ministries. So we had the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training. It was located in Tower C. We would have some savings with security and janitorial there. We didn't pay electricity bill at that location, so it's not going to be reflected as a savings per se, but certainly with the other locations. We have formally given up four of those buildings that we rented, and so we should be seeing the savings, but as I say, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact figures, but we can get that to you if you so desire. So we would have saved in the rental and electricity for those buildings. Likewise, security, because we wouldn't need to have security there, janitorial as well as telephone. Vehicles, with respect to vehicles, as I say, two different ministries, so we have merged the fleets. So we didn't have to purchase, as far as I'm aware, any vehicle this year, and I don't know that we should be thinking of purchasing any for next financial unless something drastic happens. So we should be saving in that regard because we would probably not need any further vehicles at least for a year or two. The stationery, well, I can't say offhand if we have seen savings per se because I don't have the figure, but we anticipate that we should have savings because we now in one central location. We don't have to be printing everything and having to send it. We could probably use internet, that kind of new systems, so that we should see a decrease, but I think I need to wait a little bit and see how that actually plays out.
Member Coffey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. PS, could you advise, you said you've moved out of 4 buildings. Could you advise how many buildings you still remain in, and what is the time frame for evacuating those buildings?
We have Sorry about that. We are renting a building at Bryson Road. We anticipate that we should be out of there by the end of September. We have to give 3 months notice. I think the notice has been given. We will be out of 3 we handing over keys to property management by the 31st of July for those 3. We are already out, but we are doing the tidying up of the building to give it back in the order it's supposed to be in. So that right now, other than district offices that we have in the districts, within Port of Spain, Ministry of Education is located in the towers, Tower A and Tower B, and Ryson Road. And we still have, on London Street, it was called the Ibis building, I think, where we do in storage, where we have for storage. So our vehicles are also parked there, and we have final and secondary storage at London Street.
Sure, Madam Chair. So I can take it that you have evacuated the former headquarters in St. Clair?
Well, persons are out of former headquarters in St. Clair. We have cleared out most of the equipment, whatever we would have left. My apologies. Yes, sir, we have moved out. Persons have moved out of St. Clair. We have a building that has been cleared. Finish? Archon building that has been cleared. Files, desks, equipment, everything has been cleared from that. And we're in the process of heading to the other buildings on that compound. Your question was specific to St. Clair. Yes, so one building is completely clear and we're looking at the rest.
Okay, so you still retain the keys for the buildings?
Yes, we do.
And PS, in this area, has any system been put in place for the timely reporting by your heads of division with respect to their projects and programs? Because in your submission, you had pointed out that heads of divisions are required to report on a monthly basis, verbally and in writing, to their line supervisors, but there was a difficulty with heads of divisions complying, and there is a statement that there is, however, need to put systems in place to ensure the heads report in a timely manner. Has anything been done regarding this?
The ministry has put in place a heads of division meeting that we're supposed to have every quarter, which of course is the occasion when we remind what is expected of our heads of division. The last meeting would have been in May. Unfortunately, I wasn't at it. But I know we have been trying to impress on the heads, particularly the ones with projects, to please submit the report, because it is quite a task to get the information when we require it and we have to go to them. I have not seen much of an improvement. I don't know if my managers are seeing improvement with the reporting, but I say we were due to have another meeting, and I will raise it again, that we need to send in these things monthly, at least by the first week, in the end of the first week in the next month, and get some monthly reports so that we can have the information in a more real-time fashion. Has there been any? Well, we are required to do a monthly status report to the Ministry of Planning, so that with the construction program, that I guess because that's a requirement and it's for Ministry of Planning, we get that information through EFCL. Right, and they do send their monthly reports, but internally we have to work a little harder on that one.
Okay, Member Mark, thank you.
Madam Permanent Secretary, could you share with us what is the value of the asset base of the Ministry of Education? Has any work been done in quantifying the value of the asset base of the Ministry of Education?
Mr. Mark, I will admit that we have had some difficulty getting that together because we were so scattered at different locations. Since we have moved, we have been trying to, we have an inventory of what we own, for each location, as well as the St. Clair. Whether we have a figure, I am not aware that we have a figure of all our value of all our assets, but we have a listing of all the assets that we have.
I observed that in your submission, as it relates to safeguarding your assets, you did indicate to us that one of the things that you have done to enhance your security, to safeguard these very assets, is to employ additional private security. And that is in the form of a security firm. Would you care to share with us what is the name of the security firm and the cost of the extra security that the ministry has to address in this instance?
We have several security firms employed, some dealing with the schools, some dealing with the ministry's offices. So to say which particular one we might have dealing with our assets, I don't think I'm in a position to say that, but we have a listing of the different security firms that we have employed. Now it's broken down. Sorry? Right. Now we have, as I said before, for the ECC centers, we have for primary schools, secondary schools, special schools, and the ministry's offices. So the security firms for the ministry's offices, we have SWAT and MTS. At a monthly cost of, SWAT is a little over 25,000, and MTS is $319,126.50. So we are looking at an annual cost for MTS of $3,829,518, and for SWAT we have $301,000 $320 per year for the ministry's head offices. And we have the breakdown for the schools, the primary schools, secondary schools, and ECC centers.
I was dealing with, like, for instance, in the ministry, you have to safeguard very sensitive materials, scripts inclusive. I just wanted to ask, in that context, where you have to safeguard sensitive materials, inclusive of scripts, you did submit that you had to engage extra private security to ensure that there is no unauthorized access to these sensitive material, including scripts. That is the private security company I was referring to. If you could tell us the name of this company and what it has cost the Ministry of Education to employ that same company.
I'm informed that we employ Amalgamated during the exam period to secure and transport our sensitive, exams, scripts, etc. So they are brought on specifically for that period when we have those kinds of documents available.
And could you share with us what's the cost?
Unfortunately, I don't have that figure here, but we can provide it.
Okay, Member Amara.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. P.S.
Yes,
earlier you had mentioned that you were sending out a tender for janitorial and security services. What is the current indebtedness of the ministry to MTS?
I'm being advised that we are owing, MTS is claiming that we are owing them 99 million over the period.
2000 to present.
2000 to present. Has that been verified?
Still to be verified.
Still to be verified, sir.
So is MTS required to compete for janitorial and security contracts?
Well, the plan is to go out to open tender. So they would compete, I guess, like any other firm who might be interested in getting that particular contract. But we will have to deal with that 99 million, which is, as I say, yet to be verified, because it's over quite a period, and I am getting the sense from the ministry that we are having some difficulty verifying that 99 million.
Okay, so is there a policy shift? Wasn't MTS set up as a specialized company for security and maintenance for schools? And has there been a policy shift from the preference for MTS?
Ms. Henry David has some additional information that she would share, which will give us an explanation of why we reach where we reach with MTS. Lisa?
In terms of whether MTS is required to compete, over the past years, from I think 1997 come forward, we would have had a couple of loans from the World Bank and from the IDB, and part of the loan conditionalities required us to go out to tender for security and maintenance services for the schools that would have been built under those programs. And that's why we have some schools that do not have an MTS service for janitorial and for security.
And to facilitate that, was there a change in government policy where MTS was established to be the provider of security and maintenance services to schools? Was there a change in the government policy?
As far as I'm aware, we would have gone to Cabinet whenever we go out to tender for those services.
Member Bodo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a follow-up, Madam PS, with regards to the statement that you made of the debt of 99 million, and that the ministry may have some difficulty in verifying this debt. Can you shed some more light on that as to whether there might be, are there systems in place that is supposed to be able to kick in to verify this debt? Why would you find yourself in such a position?
The current ones is not a problem to verify. The ones that going back to far as 2000 is a problem where it's to verify. To find any records and then go through the records, there's a lot of records to go through because a lot of people they claim it from back those years.
But the point I'm trying to make then, would there not have been some process in place that should have kicked in to ensure that this didn't go back that far without verification?
Yes, there was supposed to be a process in place. However, the records, it's taking time to go through the records, and it takes a lot of manpower to do it.
Madam PS, what assurance then can you give to the public, is taxpayers' money involved here, that I find this difficult to understand. What assurance can you give to the public that this is going to be corrected going forward, or, that we would not end up in a situation like this?
No, we are treating with current bills that are easily verifiable. So we are not adding to it. We are fairly up to date, if I might say so myself, with our payments, monthly payments. But the sense I've got from the ministry is we are talking about years, and we really need to get probably a unit or manpower put aside to deal specifically with this exercise. Now, we have it on the books.
The records are there.
The records are there, so it's really a matter of, as I say, going through, getting staff to work on that specifically while we treat with the current as we're going along. So I would hope that we will be in a position to at least verify some, if not all, and we will be making a request as fast as we verify to finance to see if we can get the funding to meet the debt.
Member Coffey?
I want to raise some issues with the matter of inventory controls. Now, based on your submissions, it states that the persons tasked in updating the registers are adequately trained, but training is needed due to high staff turnover. What would contribute to the staff turnover at the ministry that would need such constant training?
The persons we are speaking of to do this inventory control are clerical officers who, when acting, opportunities come up, let's just say they will be taking up the acting opportunities. So we have a lot of people who are acting and therefore moving out of that section that will be responsible for inventory control. And we have very little, if any, control over that, because we're looking at clerical officers. When the commission, the person is eligible for acting, as I say, we can't stand in the person's way. So we can't say that we are keeping the officers because the person is experienced in inventory control if they have an opportunity to move on and out of the section. So we tend to have a quick turnover of staff in there, and it's you know, if you have somebody experienced, you could probably obviously do a better job. It could be a little easier for you. But when you have new persons come in every so often, you're starting, it slows down the process.
All right. The reason I'm asking that is because you say here that you need to have a lot of training. And in response to the question on internal auditing, your submission says that over the past years, the volume of work and the necessity to meet statutory timelines have militated against training. Most of the staff were recently appointed and will be sent to relevant workshops pending the availability of funds. So if you're having training issues in terms of funding with your internal audit staff, and you need constant training for the inventory register. How are you ensuring, one, that you have the proper internal audit staff to meet your demands, and that your inventory register is kept up to date?
The issue with internal audit is, remember, they are public service positions, so we have to depend on the Public Service Commission to send staff.
I'm really asking about the training. How are you able to do it?
So most we can do, because of the shortage, is in-house training. We really haven't been able, to my knowledge, to send anyone anywhere to do any training in internal audit. So it's a matter of the internal audit staff training its own staff. With respect to the persons in inventory, we have tried to put together an asset management unit with a senior, a clerk 4, my understanding, who is experienced in the public service, to try and get staff together to do, again, internal training for inventory control. I don't know that we have, in fact, I know we did not get sufficient money to be sending anybody anywhere that will cost a substantial amount of money for either inventory control or internal audit.
Okay. And the real question I wanted to ask is that you have just made a big move from St. Clair to St. Vincent Street. You've moved assets, you've moved records, and as the accounting officer, how confident are you that you have managed to move all the ministry's assets from St. Clair to St. Vincent Street, and that you can account for all the ministry's assets? Now, I'm taking into consideration that I personally had to ensure that there was a security guard in St. Clair, and the office, I think for a period, was left unattended. So how do you, I can give you the details. How can you ensure that you have transferred all your assets from St. Vincent Street, from St. Clair to St. Vincent Street?
Going to say, Minister, remember, Mr. Coffey, we moved people first, and then we had persons go and do the asset register to make sure we are aware of what assets we had, and that was done over a period of time. I am not aware that we left St. Clair. I am not aware that we left St. Clair unsecured, because I know we left equipment and furniture and stuff there. So if that happened, I'm sorry, it could be for a very short period, but as far as I'm aware, we had watchmen and security at St. Clair. We have since done a proper inventory of all our assets from St. Clair, as well as those other buildings that we spoke about. We have moved a substantial amount to storage, and we have a record of that. I know that was done relatively recently, so we should be getting that document shortly. Our storage turned out to be Old Couva West Secondary School. So we have moved furniture, equipment from St. Clair, Econ Building, to Couva. So we have a list of when we left St. Clair, what we had in St. Clair, and we have a list of what we would have moved to Couva and wherever else we may have sent it for storage. Anywhere else?
Trade zone.
Trade zone, sorry. So we have some in trade zone and we have some in Couva.
Now, based on your submission, the tagging exercise began in 2008, but was never completed, right? And that you are now working with the IT department to complete the tagging exercise. So how confident are you that you have all your assets if you haven't completed the tagging exercise, and you haven't done a register of all your assets?
The tagging exercise, as we said, could be done where we have barcodes and that kind of serial numbers and all of that. The exercise I'm referring to since the move, which is last year to this year, really and truly was people going up there and manually, physically writing out, sorry for putting it as bluntly as that, how many chairs we have, what kind of chairs, how many desks we have, how many fans we have, how many filing cabinets, 2 drawers, 3 drawers, 5 drawers. It wasn't an IT assisted inventory done since the move. So that I know IT has an inventory of all the IT equipment. And they have that by serial number and everything down. But to say we're talking desk and chair and stuff, furniture and furnishing, that was done very much manually.
No, I'm just going with your submission here. It says that you are working with the IT department to tag all inventory items. So I understand the manual tagging, but you're working with IT so that there will be electronic tagging, I assume, of all the items. So what you're saying is that has not really...
That exercise hasn't been completed, no.
Okay. Can you explain why the process started in 2008 and has never been completed or gotten off the ground?
Personally, sir, I cannot say because I literally joined Ministry of Education last year. So we're going back with persons who might have been, this would have been collated by persons who may have been in the ministry going back to 2008. And I think I can safely say none of us here. Lisa, I don't know if Lisa... Oh, God, okay. Maybe you could share that with the committee.
There was a firm that was hired that would have started the process. It's quite possible that somewhere along the line, in terms of their deliverables and arrangements for payment, something fell apart towards the end of their contract. But I cannot, in all honesty, I'm not in a position to give you any details on what happened. I can say that they would have started the process back then.
Okay, well, could you get back to us in writing on what exactly happened there with the firm? And because 2008 to now, and you're dealing with the ministry's assets, it's a long time for the project not to be completed. I want to move on to the safeguarding assets.
Remember, if you just permit me, if you could, sorry to do this, I just want to get some clarification about tagging and inventory when we're talking about the register. That has me a little confused from what I've been hearing. Okay? What I understood, Pierce, and you'll tell me if I'm incorrect. With the move, you would have manually created a register of your assets. Has there been any tagging? We're not talking electronically, because you could tag manually by putting a sticker or whatever. Have you historically tagged any of your assets?
Based on discussions with staff, I would say yes. Whether it was a 100% completed exercise, I am not in a position to say.
But this would have been a manual system.
Yes, it's
right?
either
It's a stamp, a sticker,
stamp or whatever. Yes.
The project that fell through was an electronic system or manual system?
Electronic database.
It's a tagging system.
It might have been a hybrid because they would have come manually and applied sticky tags onto the furniture, but they would have stored the information electronically.
Okay, so it was still manual tagging?
Yes.
All right. You have now a project for doing it electronically, electronic tagging? What you're working with the IT department? What is that?
IT is supposed to be doing, as I say, an inventory. I guess it will be logged.
No, we're not talking about the logging now, right?
We're talking
about the tagging.
Right. All the IT equipment has been tagged. right? But as I say, IT was focusing on the assets, the IT assets.
Right.
They weren't dealing with, as far as I am aware, and I don't know.
Across the board?
Across the board with desks and fan and chairs and all
Yes.
of that.
Okay, good.
They were dealing specifically with the desktops, the UPS, the laptops, the minor equipment, and as well, the photocopy and the fax machine, those things.
Right.
Printers, but not desks and chairs and fans.
All right.
And
So, even with what the IT department has done, this might just be really a manual tagging too.
Well, yes,
Yeah,
my understanding would, I would say yes.
manual, okay. Now, you may have a register done electronically, meaning that you have it somewhere in a soft copy.
Yes.
You don't have any system of electronic tagging, which means, for instance, let's say there's a barcode that could be scanned, or, you know, in like some libraries, there's any visible tag, but if you pass through a field, it would send off an alarm. You have nothing like that.
Nothing like what you just explained there
Right.
about sending off any alarm.
Right. But you have no electronic system of tagging.
When it were two separate ministries, there was an electronic tagging done of the IT equipment in the Ministry of Tertiary Education. I cannot say with any certainty whether that exercise may have started and just not been completed with original Ministry of Education to make a distinction. But we are now one ministry, so we have to work on it across the board. But there was that for.
So there was partially, but as far as you're concerned, in the main, it doesn't exist.
In the main, I would say it doesn't exist.
All right. But there is an admission that you will have difficulties when items are purchased and they're not tagged in any form. Okay? All items that are purchased are entered into a register.
Yes, ma'am.
Including your consumables.
We had some difficulties with that before, but it certainly has been corrected.
It has been corrected?
Yes, ma'am.
Are these registers checked?
Yes, this was checked by audit.
All right, but you have a difficulty with audit. And I'm not going into audit. I mean, when one reads your submission, you have a difficulty with audit.
Spread thinly.
Okay, so that what, I guess, excites me about the submission, I can't see audit being a backup for your inventory register or for your lacquer tagging because of the real difficulties you have with audit. Okay, so that to say internal audit, it doesn't seem to me to be giving me any sort of comfort where there seems to be a deficiency with the inventories. There seems, and this is meaning the registers, there seems to be difficulty in the checking of the registers because you've cited a high rotation of staff, so that even when you feel that there's a discrepancy in the inventory register and it's pointed out, the staff to come back and check it may not exist. Then there seems to be, and I don't want to say no tagging, there seems to be challenges with tagging, all tool. So that it comes back to the question, how then can one be satisfied that the ministry knows what, I mean, not talking about the schools, we're just talking about the ministry, what assets exist, and that could say, okay, yeah, we're supposed to have 10 chairs, but these are the 10 chairs, because you could have 10 chairs, but and when you count 10. But the 10 that entered in the inventory are not the 10 that you're watching there. What then controls you have that can satisfy the listening public that the assets are secured and safeguarded?
Secured and safeguarded might actually be a little easier to answer to because we have security in place for that. However, I accept that I know the inventory was done as a result of the move, but to say with 100% certainty that, as you say, the 10 chairs and the 6 desks we have now would have been the 10 chairs and the 6 desks we acquired in 1920, sorry.
Okay.
I cannot say that with 100% certainty.
So, okay, so let's say then, let's understand. You could say that as of the move, you have a reliable inventory of what you had as of the move. You can't say whether that related to what you should have had before, but you know okay. Going forward from the move, have you during the move been able to tag the items that you have recorded in your inventory register?
I am being reminded that we did not move into the building with a lot of the furniture that we had. Most of the furniture has gone into storage. So we know what we had and what we moved, whether they gone trade zone or whether they have gone to Hoover. The building was outfitted, so we didn't need to bring in. But the equipment, yes.
But the question remains, what is in trade zone or what is in Hoover, which according to your inventory should be this? Have you tagged them so that you could say these are the 10 chairs?
My understanding is though we haven't tagged it, we have a description of the items. As I say, one might be saying a green chair, high back, red chair, something. We really don't have all the items tagged, and it is certainly something we have to work on. We did have to move in a bit of a short period of time. So we will have to do that as the next step now that we have moved from one spot to the other.
All right, and what you have in a new building, are they tagged?
Yes, the workstations are tagged, the equipment tagged. Because we look at what we have, what we brought, what we think, like...
No, the new things you told me in the new building, it came outfitted. Are these tagged? Are these all entered into the relevant inventory registers? Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So, all right, so going forward, you should be pretty
with what we have, yes.
So you have a cutoff date going forward.
Yeah.
All right? Now, what I wanted to ask you, okay, sorry, I intervened, so Member Coffey, I'll let you go back to where you were. I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to go back to the safeguarding of assets. And you said that you have vaults equipped with cameras, and when exam scripts arrive, the floor is restricted to authorized staff, and that you have some confidence in the integrity of the examination system, right? Now, there were 2 newspaper reports that seem to question that. There was an issue in 2008 where it was reported that Cape exams, it led to the postponed exam in Trinidad and Tobago. 5 people were charged with an offense, and they were given community service. Now, in 2017, there were also allegations of the examinations being leaked. That's in May, June this year. It's in the newspapers. The test scores were published, and the ministry undertook to investigate the matter. Now, I'm trying to square the what you have here in terms of the stringent security controls for your assets and the fact that there have been instances where the exams were leaked. Or have you confirmed, well, in case of 2008, charges were filed and people were found guilty. In terms of 2017, what is the latest on that
I I am not in a position right now to give any information on those allegations. Sorry, sir.
Okay.
Because I haven't received any formal report that I would be, and so therefore I'm not in a position to share.
Well, 2008 was reported and dealt with by the police. 2017 was in the newspaper.
Sorry, sir?
2017 was it's just this year. May, June, it was in the newspaper.
No, but I haven't gotten any report on it.
Okay.
Sir.
Okay, so
and I've been reminded that as a result of the 2008, we put those stringent measures in place.
Okay. So could you get back to us on the...
On the 2017, yes, sir.
Thank you. Yes.
Member Mark? Yes.
Madam Chair, I just... Yes, as soon as I finish. Yes, Madam Chair, I just wanted to ask the Permanent Secretary if she can share with us the composition, the size of the inventory unit of the Ministry of Education. How many personnel do you have in that unit? And could you make available to the chairman or to the secretary a copy of your register? The current register. If you could make a copy available of that register in terms of your current inventory. And could you tell us what is the current size of your unit and whether that unit is adequate to deal with your assets? Because your ministry, you know, has a lot of assets. And because of the need to keep track of your assets, you need to have people regularly checking your register. I see in your submission, you said it is done on an annual basis. Do you think that that is adequate given the value, the volume, and the size of your asset base? Could you share with us your thoughts on it?
The size of the unit we have in the ministry dealing with assets, it's headed by an AO5. We have a clerk 4. We have an assistant from our OJT at this point in time, and we have 6 handymen who would be actually responsible for going and checking and recording the assets. I will admit it doesn't seem to be sufficient given the size of the ministry. However, the schools have their own asset registers. What I am speaking of here is very specific to the head office. So even for the head office, I think we need to look at that structure, but the schools have their own asset registers, and they are responsible, the clerk 3? Clerk 3 is responsible for maintaining those registers in the schools. So we would have the clerk 3s in the secondary schools, and the district, what is for primary schools? Right, I'm correct, yes. The primary schools are responsible for their own assets. Register, sorry.
Would you want to share with us what is the structure that you have in existence at the levels of the primary school, the secondary school, for ensuring that there is proper inventory taken and registers established? What is the situation there?
Okay,
at the primary and the secondary and even our early childhood centers?
The secondary schools had to have the clerk 3s who would be responsible for the maintenance of the asset registers. The primary schools, we have over the last few years been employing business operations assistants who would be at the primary schools, and that would be part of their duties to maintain a register in the primary schools. The centers, the BOAs. Now, the centers, I believe the administrators and ECC teachers in these centers, who they would have to take that responsibility. Those centers would not have a Class 3 or a business operations assistant, but they are much smaller centers. So the administrators responsible for those centers would have to take up that responsibility. But in the secondary schools, Class 3s, and in the primary schools, the BOAs.
Madam PS, are you satisfied with the level of staffing at both the Ministry of Education and when you go to your early childhood centers, primary and secondary school levels? Are you happy, are you satisfied or comfortable with the level of staffing so that you can be properly assured in your mind and in the ministry's mind that that kind of attention that is required for your inventory control is in fact being effected, in a proper way, given the asset base of the Ministry of Education? Are you satisfied? Are you comfortable? Or do you think that there's need for some improvement in those areas?
I would say there's need for some improvements, because I'm thinking of discussions I've had with audit where we are saying over the years we still having issues with those inventory registers. So I will admit that we need to do some more where getting those inventories in the schools are concerned. I am not comfortable that one Class 3 might be able to do that as efficiently and as effectively as we would like it to be done.
Member Bash?
Thank you, Madam Chair. These questions are just a follow-up to Member Coffey's and Member Mark's questions as it relates to safeguarding assets. Is there a procedure followed to access materials and equipment stored? And who has the authorization to access sensitive materials?
When it comes to this sensitive material, it is so sensitive that I'm not even sure I can give you that answer, actually. But when we're talking consumables, and there's a requisition that each unit is required to complete. How often is that?
On a monthly basis.
It's supposed to be on a monthly basis, but I guess if you have a little emergency, you could do it outside of your normal monthly basis. The head of the division is supposed to sign off on that requisition sheet. It goes to general admin. We have storekeepers for stores who would be responsible for saying what has been issued from stores and making sure that our inventory is up to mark.
Okay, the ministry acknowledges that there have been security breaches, as Member Coffey mentioned. All right. Can you tell me how we plan to move forward with this? How are we going to treat with this in the future if it does happen again?
I don't know that I actually acknowledge that there was a breach. I know we have allegations of a breach which we are investigating. So until I am sure there really has been a breach, what we have done, as I say, there are certain floors with sensitive material that it's restricted to persons treated with those material. Right? So we have them on a particular floor. We have the vault, we have the cameras installed so that we can see who might be entering in certain areas. And we have the keypad where they have to enter a numeric code, which I could tell you I don't even have. So that we have put as best as we can systems in place to secure those highly sensitive documents. And I am yet to receive the report about those allegations.
Are you planning to receive them anytime in the near future? Or?
But I am waiting.
How long have we been waiting since
We don't even know this.
You see, that's why I didn't want to say that we accepted that there was any breaches. They are simply allegations. I came back out from leave and we were hearing about the allegations, but I haven't received a report yet. I know with C results coming out tomorrow and exams basically is finished, we should be getting that report within the month.
Are there any plans to replace equipment in fiscal 2017? And can you briefly state the items replaced in fiscal 2016?
Printers, photocopiers.
If you need a listing, I will have to provide that for you because I cannot say offhand what we may have replaced, over that period. But I can say we probably replaced some printers and that kind of thing because remember they have a lifespan. But I would want to provide that information if you don't mind, Madam Chair.
All right. And also, on average, how much is spent per year by the ministry to replace equipment?
I have been informed it's not much, but I would prefer to give you an actual figure. Look it back over the last couple of years.
Thank you.
I want to say, Madam PS, I much prefer that response than the one that was given in the submission. Member Coffey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to get on to the part of your submissions where you noted that the absence of a separate body for internal audit to report to. Now, it says that Ministry of Staff, principals, and others are not obligated to furnish information and answer questions. So the following hurdles have been experienced by the ministry. System policy changes are not communicated to the internal audit and very rarely documented. Recommendations are not implemented. Queries are disregarded by the auditee. After 10 years of auditing, inventories in schools are not accurate. Now, as the accounting officer, how do you plan to treat with this?
It was brought to my attention when we were doing this report that we really have been having issues with persons responding. So it's a matter of impressing on them and probably sending out some circulars that we need to take this seriously and to respond to the queries. While there mightn't be a legal obligation, to me there is a moral obligation to provide the information as requested. The issue with the registers, that's why I was saying earlier, I am not particularly satisfied or comfortable, given that I'm seeing that over 10 years we're doing registers and still we're not getting it right. Clearly we have to look at the systems, other than staffing, we have to look at the systems where those registers are concerned. So my intention is to work with my general admin as well as with audit, just to get the idea what are the issues and see what systems we can put in place to correct some of those. But I would need just hold discussions with our heads and impress on them the need to respond to the audit queries.
Madam
Whether
PS,
they like it or not, we have to.
No, I would like to believe, and you can ask your Deputy PS whether this is accurate. I would like to believe that the role of the accounting officer and the permanent secretary has to be more than moral suasion. If you're talking here, there are public service regulations, and if officers are disregarding circulars, if they are disregarding instructions, I think we have to go beyond mere moral suasion. And if after 10 years we can't even get inventories from schools, it speaks to a breakdown in terms of the ministry and in terms of its executing its mandate across the entire ministry. And we cannot assume that this is simply a matter of moral suasion. There must be some way, as an accounting officer, that we can take effect on all the recommendations, and because so if I'm to believe this submission, what we, after this exercise, we can make recommendations, we can make suggestions, and the Ministry of Education can just disregard it and continue as though nothing happened.
I would like to say if this committee makes some recommendation, we will certainly have to take it on. The intention is to send out some circulars so that persons will be informed or instructed, if you use that word, that when they have queries, you are required to respond to those queries. I cannot say with any level of certainty whether that may have been issued before, but if certainly, we will have to issue it now, given this report. The registers in the school, I'm not saying that there aren't registers, but I'm not comfortable that they are accurate. That is my concern, that is how accurate these registers actually are based on the discussions with our auditors. So we need, as I say, to put something else in place to see. It's not that they don't have the registers, it's how accurate the registers are.
Okay, Member Kafi has ushered us into internal audits. I'll take Mrs. Webster Roy with a few questions, and then I'll take Member Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam PS, following on from what you just said, what definite immediate action will you take to ensure that the inventories at schools are reconciled?
My intention is to discuss with our auditor and see what suggestions we could come up with and issue some instructions on how we will proceed going forward. The discussions, I haven't had the discussions yet. As I said, I just came back out from leave. So we plan to have those discussions soon and issue something so that we could get it right come new financial for sure. It will take some time. Schools are closed, will be closed from next week for that matter. So that we have to make sure we put something out so that come new school year, which is not the new financial yet, but new school year, that we can see how we can show improvement in inventory control in the school.
Okay, and the same for internal audit. What immediate definite actions you will take to improve internal audit?
The issue with internal audit and the staff shortages is that we can't hire people to put in internal audit. We have to depend on Service Commission to fill the positions. So we are very short-staffed. We have persons going on vacation. I mean, I can't deny persons going on vacation. So until we get the positions filled through the Service Commission, I have very little control over the staffing of the unit. When the two ministries joined up, we were able, Ministry of Education, original internal unit, we acquired what, two? We acquired 4 positions, but we only had 2 of those positions filled. So now so basically the internal audit was only increased by 2, whereas we ended up joining up two ministries. So we have been plugging with HR to try and get, again and again, over and over, to impress on Service Commission if we could get our auditing assistant positions filled, because we tend to have more of those. We have 8 vacant.
8 without acting?
Sorry?
8 vacant without any acting incumbents?
Without any actors.
Okay.
And we have who would be acting in higher positions. But we have 1 auditor 3 and one auditor 2 and 4 auditors 1, with a ministry the size of the Ministry of Education. But we have 8 auditing assistants.
How long have these positions been vacant?
Oh, it is quite a while. I'm being told more than 2 years.
More than 2 years?
Yes.
When last did you follow up with Service Commission to have them filled?
When last? No, we would raise it with HR, and HR would be responsible for making the request to the Service Commission. I did not get that information when the last request would have been sent to the Service Commission. But since I've been in the ministry, I have been hearing about our staff shortages in internal audit and bringing it to the attention of HR for them to raise it with the Service Commission.
In the interim, do you intend to have acting?
Some of them are acting, but when we have someone acting in a higher position, we need to get our body in the lower position, and we still need to get that individual from the commission.
Okay. Is there any ongoing training program or a schedule of training programs available for staff who are interested in pursuing internal audit at the ministry, or persons in the junior position where they could be able to get the skills to move up, not only within the ministry but maybe within the service?
We have not been able to send, as I said earlier, to send them on any external training, so that what you're doing really is training on the job. We train you internally.
So you have a schedule of training internally?
We don't have a specific schedule, for example, like 2 days a week or 3 days a month. We don't have it like that, but it's a matter of on-the-job training and showing improvements, how to do the audits a little more efficiently. So it's the responsibility of the senior officers to assist the junior officers almost on a daily basis, but it isn't a structured, you come off the job and you go into training. No, not like that.
Okay, in light of the shortage in staff, how often are audits conducted and what types of audits?
What do we have? Anjani, can you share that? The summary would
Okay.
Right, so we conduct audits on a daily basis. We have a monthly head office audits that we assign 6 teams, at least 6 teams, to do head office audits. For the schools, we have been working with 6 teams also to audit the government secondary schools. But on a daily basis, we have pension and leave, files, contract gratuity files, salary arrears and increments. So we have all those things to do. But on a daily basis, the statutory audits as the pension and leave, salary arrears, contract gratuity and previous year's vouchers, that is a daily basis.
So you noted that on a daily basis, pension and leave records will be audited. So all your pension and leave records across the ministry,
whatever is sent to us,
up to date.
Yes, we will assign it to officers within possibly a 2 weeks period. We'll get it done and send it back. That will go for arrears, contract gratuities, previous year's vouchers. The school audits, we go twice a week for the month, and head office is 1 monthly per team. So we work in teams, so so the learning process will go on and the training will happen.
So for the last 3 months at least, 90% of schools would have been audited.
The last 3 months, we've been doing, this week we have completed 85 secondary schools in one area of auditing, cafeteria and school fundraising accounts. In January to February, we did inventory and inventory control, vote book.
Okay, thank you.
Member Mark?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Before I pose my question, Madam Permanent Secretary, could you share with this committee what is the size of your establishment, the overall size in terms of permanent contract, as well as those who might be described as temporary in the overall establishment of the Ministry of Education? Do you have those figures with you?
Unfortunately, no, I don't. I did not work with them, so I really don't have them available, but I can get that information to you, certainly.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, through you, I'm just following up on the internal audit function. And you know, this audit function is very critical in providing continuous review of the effectiveness of risk management, control, and even the governance processes as we seek to promote accountability and greater transparency. Now, in a ministry with a budget of $5.8 billion, it is clear that the internal audit unit or function leaves a lot to be desired. And I just wanted to ask you, it appears to us, based on your submission, that the internal audit function is in a virtual parallel with general administration. And one gets the impression, and you could clarify it for me, whether you have a separate, independent, internal audit unit, or whether your internal audit unit is part of your general administration. And you can clear that up for us. If it is such, what steps are being taken by the permanent secretary to ensure that you have a separate and independent internal audit function, and what personal intervention you are taking as permanent secretary, accounting officer, to liaise with the Service Commission, DPA, to ensure that your internal audit unit is brought up to mark, up to speed in terms of staffing. Could you share with us your thoughts on this?
As the way I look at it, I have an independent internal audit unit. As far as the estimate, you would see it appearing under the heading General Administration and Finance Division, but it is an independent audit. The auditor 3 heads that audit, and she reports to the permanent secretary. We liaise with, as I say, because I may not personally, I have not yet personally contacted the Service Commissions to try and get our staff in. I really have been depending on HR to pursue it, because it's not something that started last year, to continue pursuing getting those positions filled. It is getting, as I say, but the ministries joined up, and we now have this huge ministry. It is getting more and more urgent that we at least fill our positions, even if we have to consider looking at increasing the establishment. My first step would be, let us try and fill our vacant positions, see if that is going to make it for better efficiency, and if not, then we go the other step, which is probably trying to increase the establishment of the unit, which is a longer process. So I'm thinking, let us start with, we have positions that need to be filled, try and get the appropriate persons in those positions, do a reevaluation and see, is that sufficient, given the size of the ministry? If not, then we're looking at a restructuring of the internal audit unit, which, as I said, is a different process, which could take a little longer. So I am really hoping for the shorter, which is fill the positions that we have. I can make a personal intervention, seeing that we have been talking this, my understanding is more than last year when I came in, and see where we are to trying to get those positions filled. But it is, as far as I am seeing it, an independent internal audit unit.
So you are saying that the internal audit unit is completely separate and apart from your general administration, and there is no confusion in terms of that unit?
Not the functioning of the unit, no. As I say, if you look in the estimates, you might see it under the heading General Administration and Finance, but they do not report to anyone in General Administration nor in Finance.
Right. And could you also share with us, following up again from Member Coffey intervention, what efforts are being made by the ministry to provide these officers in the internal audit unit with some continuous program of training and retraining, so that they can sharpen their skills in carrying out their functions? So critical, given the size of the ministry and the value of its allocation.
Because, as I say, we don't have enough to spare to send any external. We're really dependent on the senior technical officers to do the training on the job. As Ms. Samaru said, they go out in teams, so you have that continuous training happening while the job is being performed, duties being performed. To do otherwise, we're going to limit ourselves further, because if you have to pull persons off, as I say, the same auditors, 3, 2, and 1 will have to do the training for the auditing assistants, and we really can't afford to take those persons away from the program. As it is, we trying very hard to see if we could make our 100% for our program for the year, and we having some issues with that, so we've been pushing to see if we can get the audits done while the training is actually going on, and not to have it separated so far.
Yes, I just wanted to, again, for some clarification based on some questions Member Mark asked. I understand you to say you have a separate unit, but I think what Member Mark was asking is, when he asked separate from general administration, is whether the audit personnel do general administration work too. And I think that is the distinction, that their work is not limited to the audit function, but the audit staff is taken up doing the work of general administration.
You could correct me, but not the work of general administration.
Okay.
The internal audit will have to do its normal administrative type duties, like return of personnel, sick leave, anything that is a normal unit, work of a normal unit. They will have that responsibility because they are a unit in the ministry, right? But to say that doing general administration work, I would say no.
All right. So let me ask something then. And this may be what is causing us a little confusion in our understanding, and therefore you will have an opportunity to clear it up. In the submission, there was a statement to the effect that the ministry intends to separate the internal audit from general administration. Okay, and I think, and that comes with other statements to the effect, yes, other routine duties such as return of personnel, attendance register updates, submission of application for leave, etc. is done. So you're saying now it is only done by internal audit for internal audit and not for the general administration?
For internal audit,
for
as
internal
any
audit.
other unit within the ministry.
Okay, and I think that is really what was not properly understood to us by the way the submission was given. So when one says that you're going to separate the internal audit from general administration, does that mean that one is going to take away from internal audit unit the administrative functions that relate to the internal audit unit?
That can't.
Well, I would expect so from what you just explained.
Can't happen, because I wouldn't have anybody else to do those functions for the internal audit unit.
Right.
Now, if we get what the thinking is, if we get officers assigned to that unit who would deal with those clerical duties, it would free up the auditor 3-2 from doing those kinds of duties. But without that, it is expected that the head of the unit, who is the auditor 3, will have those administrative duties to perform until we get some other arrangement in place.
All right. And therefore, when you get that other arrangement in place, that would be then general clerks being assigned to audit unit to do those duties. Yes. Okay, I think we now understand what you were asking. Okay, so our members, in the interest of time, I suggest we go on to goods and services, and I will invite Member Rambarat to enter the discussion here, please.
Yes, I want to go back to your opening statement and just ask you a more fundamental question. You pointed to the reduction for this fiscal. So after the original reduction and the mid-year review, I think you we're required to work with about 625 million less this year. Is there significant duplication within the ministry, particularly in some of the entities that fall under the ministry? So, for example, is there significant duplication and overlap when you look at UTT, COSTAT, YTEP, MIC, NESC, HYPE, Serval, and when you look at some which are not under the education, like MILAT, MIPAT, Civilian Conservation Corps, which falls in other ministries. But is there significant duplication and overlap in the ministry?
I would say that some of the agencies seem to be doing similar things. For example, we have COSTAT, we have University of the West Indies might be doing similar programs. There's very little I think the ministry can do with that because they have their own academic board and they decide what programs they're doing. When it comes to the institutions doing technical vocational training, you may also see some overlap in those areas. They are not doing exactly the same thing, but you may see some similarities. This might be an opportunity where we are forced to look at that more closely and see if we could do some rationalization, because none of the agencies got the monies that they wanted. They had to review their programs and see which programs they may have to, if it's not overly subscribed, to see what they could probably stop doing for now. So it is an opportunity, I think, that we can look at all the TVET programs that our institutions are offering and see if there's any kind of rationalization that we can do with the TVET. But as I say, coming to University of the West Indies and the COSTAT and the UTT, they have their own arrangements. As I say, I know UWE has its own academic board. They determine what programs they're going to run. It's not as easy as it might be. I'm not saying it will be, but it might be, to look at the agencies with the TVET programs. But as I say, it's an opportunity. This has caused us to have to look at that quite seriously.
But I mean, you're right now in your planning for next fiscal. So are you planning on the same allocation? Are you planning on what you got previous fiscal, or are you planning on a reduced allocation for the next fiscal?
We are looking at it very, very, very closely, because our initial estimate was higher than last year. We have to be realistic, and we sat down and we had an exercise last week, and we are planning to continue this week to be looking at our estimates to see how close we could bring it to last year figure, because we understand the financial constraints that the country is facing. So where the institutions are concerned, they are also been mandated to review their estimates and look closely at what areas they can cut down, because we cannot go forward with the kind of requests that we have had. So we are in the process right now of reviewing our budget estimates, and the agencies have been asked to do the same.
Because when I look at goods and services, I am seeing some big numbers. And if you have multiple, I think I saw a figure of 100. If you have buildings across the country, not just Ministry of Education, if your agencies have buildings across the country, like COSTAT, for example, has just, I don't know if they've opened a new campus in Chaguanas. Those things every building comes with an electricity cost, because I'm not too sure if schools are turning off the lights as I believe the cabinet required them to do. They come with electricity, they all come with security, they all come with small equipment needs, they all come with staffing needs. And when I look at goods and services in general, I'm seeing some numbers there that I am not sure if those numbers could be sustained over any lengthy period. And I'm wondering if in the context of what has happened this fiscal so far, serious attention is being given to Plan A and increase, Plan B, what you've gotten this year, or Plan C, a reduction. So the other point question I wanted to raise is in Rudranath Kapildev Learning Resource Center, and I was very surprised to see on page 19, you wouldn't have that. I was very surprised to see the reference to certain activities being impacted by the reduced allocation, and I see support for the implementation of National Junior Panorama Competition, National Junior Soca Monarch, Chutney Monarch, Carnivals Competition, Secondary School Volleyball, Badminton, Table Tennis, Primary Schools Football, Cricket, Netball, Primary School Track and Field Events. I was surprised. What is the link between the Rudranath Kapildev Learning Resource Center and support for this whole list of activities which have been said to be impacted?
Those matters fall under our Curriculum Development Division, which is located down at Rudranath Kapildev Learning Resource Center. And I would ask Ms. Ingrid Kenchan if she could go into a little more details on those programs.
Honorable Member, can you clarify a little bit more the nature of your question, aside from the beginning of the explanation in that the Curriculum Division administers these activities so that, and is located at Rudranath Kapildev, so there's a separate vote which is located there, hence the location of the funds and the activities under the Rudranath Kapildev Learning Resource Center. Does your question go beyond that?
Well, your answer is even more confusing. What is the connection between curriculum development and the National Secondary School Volleyball Competition?
Okay. So within the curriculum of the country lies supporting activities in the area of sport, in the area of culture that are complementary to the curriculum and supported by the officers of the Curriculum Division in terms of technical support and oversight for these activities. So our officers, for instance, in the Physical Education and Sport Unit would be working with the associations that are responsible for each of these sporting activities. Now, each of them, if you take any one, for instance, volleyball, there is an organization, a national organization approved by cabinet, and this structure is approved by cabinet, that this organization would administer from the district level through to the national level sporting activities, competitions, etc., to support the sport as it moves through. The officers of the Curriculum Division work alongside those organizations and provide a measure of oversight and technical support to the administration of each of those organizations, in addition to which the Ministry of Education supports some of the financing of it. Now, there's a wide field of variability in that for each particular organization there are sponsors. So for instance, for cricket you might find a higher level of sponsorship, for football, etc., so that the balance between funding from sponsorship and funding from the part of the Ministry of Organization varies for each of them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other member has any other question to ask on this area of goods and services? Okay, and therefore if there are no further questions on goods and services, then might I suggest then that we go on to the minor equipment? And if I call on Member Bash to begin the conversation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In your submission, under minor equipment purchases, the following equipment is expected to be procured with the above allocation, which is $1 million. The upgrade of ICT equipment, networking for occupation of new building, upgrade of ICT equipment and network primary schools, upgrade of information and communication equipment for networking for secondary schools, Ministry of Education, new buildings in Vincent Street on gym equipment and vault, and wireless equipment, vacuum cleaners, refrigerators, etc. Is the $1 million allocation enough to procure all of the equipment detailed in your submission?
No, ma'am.
All right. But how is the ministry prioritizing the procurement of these equipment?
Well, we would be looking at the ones that need to change out first. There would be older equipment that we would need to look at first, and we could phase in the change out of equipment. There was reference to the gym, and we had to prioritize, and that is a bit low on the priority list at this point in time. So we're really looking at the critical items that we need to change and see how we could spread that money. And maybe, according to how critical some are, we may even have to look to move some money into the vote. But we are going to phase in these things depending on how critical the need is. And only change when required, and not do a across-the-board change because you may have bought all in 2000 and, for example, 8. So we will look at the ones, of course, the ones that are not working will have to change first, and we will phase in the rest. But we would have some where we know we're not looking at this year at all.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Member Coffey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to go back to the submissions on communications under the heading of promotions, publicity, and printing. Now, you state here that you have not been able to produce newspaper advertisements because they are too costly, and that you have halted video productions because of the same reason, and outreach programs are being conducted. Now, if the intention is to reach students, or even the general public, I have not seen the potential use of social media identified. And I think it's a good thing that you are no longer able to afford traditional media. But is there any attempt being made to use social media to reach your stakeholders?
Yes, sir, we have been. In fact, I am reading here where we have some good practices is the use of social media to publish announcements and advertisements previously published in print media. So we are cutting down costs on that and using social media for those purposes. And we have been using it to get our message, Ministry of Education's message across. So we have been using social media, and I don't know that we have a choice. We will be doing it more in the future.
But even in terms of the advertisements and the documentaries, which you are no longer able to produce, social media is also an avenue. So I know the ministry does have audio-visual capacity at Rudolph Capildale, and I know you did have an audio-visual unit. So is that not in operation anymore? What's the issue there?
Go ahead. Because it's under Rudolph Capildale, I would like Ms. Kemchan to give us a little more information on that, please.
Honorable members, it's a question that is a little bit complex in terms of, one, the facilities that fall under the functions of these units, as well as the staffing of them. I can venture to say and share with you that this is the 25th anniversary of the Rujanat Kapildeo Learning Resources Center, and no significant work has been done in several of the areas over that time, and several of the facilities, including those in the media area, are falling into disrepair at this point in time. We do, however, retain staff, and there are several services which continue to work out of that area, given the limited staff and so on, including publications, including some media recordings and so on. A lot of the work of that unit, though, has functioned in terms of requests from the rest of the Ministry of Education to record events, to record things which can be broadly shared with the public, like research symposia, best practices in schools, etc. The unit has never been engaged in the kind of work that you're talking about, advertisements and that kind of thing. It has never been that function. It has been a function in support of the curriculum division and other units of the Ministry of Education. Did I answer your question?
Partly, but is it that you're saying that you have people employed but no equipment for them to work with properly? Is that it?
It's both limited equipment and limited staff, because some of the positions too have not been filled over time, so the staff has been diminishing as the years have gone by, and positions not filled. So it's a dual case we're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Member Mark?
Yes, Madam Permanent Secretary. On the issue of the scholarships, right, and advanced training division, we recognize that there's an item that deals with associate professional program. That's an item. And through this program, you seek to provide employment for national scholars who would have completed their course of study, or who would have successfully completed their course of study, but who would not at that time be able to find substantive positions within the public sector. Could you tell us, with the reduction in that allocation, how have you been managing that arrangement, and whether those persons who are seeking placement, you find a disconnect between their level of skills and competencies and the placement that you are able to allocate for those individuals? What has been the experience, and what steps are being taken to rectify this conundrum that exists?
I would speak to part of your question, and I would ask Dr. Holdup to go into a little more detail. The program, we have a maximum about 400 that we can cater for placement, and we have been over the years managing within that 400, yes, placement. We try our best to place persons in areas, ministries, departments, suited to the skill they would have acquired. And I would say we try our best, because we may not get it right all the time, but we get requests from ministries for certain persons with certain skill sets, and we try to see how best we can place those persons there. Dr. Holdup, could you elaborate a little more, please?
Good afternoon, members, Chair, Vice Chair, members. We have an allocation of about 17 million to fund the associate professionals, not including the graduates of the medical studies areas. So those persons who do law, who do business, who do chemical and process engineering, and those are in fact the areas of focus when it comes to the scholarships that people choose to do. Those persons, when they return after 3 years, 5 years, and so on, are placed when we can find positions for them. In many cases, we have persons returning to the University of the West Indies because that is the place that welcomes them back, and they act there as tutors, as support for undergraduates, and so on. The persons who would have studied law, they continue to do their law certificate, and when they come out, we generally can find places for them with the AG's office, with the Solicitor General, and places like that. We have very few people doing the business area, and yet that is the area that we can find places in many ministries and state sector bodies in, but we are looking at the choice made by scholars. So, in effect, it is necessary, it's mandated according to the policy that we place scholars in a place that will add to their competencies and skills, but we find an oversupply of certain professions where the number of places are limited, especially in the medical area and increasingly in the law area.
Permanent Secretary, could you share with us what control does your ministry have for the auditing of scholarships secured or obtained by relatives of staff employed at the ministry? Or what kind of system you have in place in terms of controls?
We offer there are scholarships that persons get on the basis of their results that CSEC can keep. That is basically straight on results. We also have scholarships that we advertise, and we go through, we have a scholarship selection committee. We would come up with a framework, we get that framework approved, we would use that framework to interview applicants, and they're selected, we make the recommendation for the selection to Cabinet, and Cabinet takes a decision. On the first two, it has nothing, well, because it's on the basis of results at exams, that is the basis. So we really can't get into the parents and where the parents working and that kind of thing. The others that we advertise, they're clear. The framework is very clear. If according to the particular scholarship, we may say members of staff, relatives, but I don't know that we do that. And but we go through the criteria that would have been established, whether it's scholarships that the government of Trinidad and Tobago is offering, or whether it's a scholarship that is offered by another country. We have scholarships from Cuba, we have scholarships from OAS, we have Commonwealth. So it depends on the scholarship, but I am not aware, and I would ask Dr. Holub if she could clarify for us if there's any audit, as you put it, for whether the members of staff.
It's a matter that the public is concerned about, and they would like to have some clarification.
As the Permanent Secretary has intimated, you find that the CAPE scholars are selected on the basis of their results and strictly on that basis. If it is that the public would note that a number of CAPE scholars tend to have teachers as their parents, it may simply be the result of excellent training that they provide from very young in support of these persons. When it comes to the other kind of scholarships, which are offered, let us say, on the basis of what Cuba has invited us to take up, or the Commonwealth Secretariat, As the Permanent Secretary said, there's an evaluation framework that is applied to the public when the scholarships are advertised, so that persons applying know very clearly what they must apply and what experience they will go through. They provide an essay, for example, that indicates how they see their studies contributing in the future to the country, and they go through an interview by a committee set up and approved by the cabinet that consists of a number of professionals. So there's very little chance that who your parent is will ensure that you will get the scholarship.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Dan.
Member Bodo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Still on the issue of scholarships, and through you, Madam PS, Dr. Hola mentioned the issue with the excessive amount of medical graduates, and in fact, we have reports of medical graduates being unable to secure jobs and so on. Does the ministry liaise with the Ministry of Health, who would be the primary stakeholder in terms of any needs assessment, to guide the scholarship winners in terms of which areas that they might want to take up their scholarships?
The majority of the scholarships on offer are CAPE scholarships. Many of those who are able to access CAPE scholarships do so because they do excellent work in the science areas. They therefore already have in their minds what they wish to do at the undergraduate level. And so we do find that as many as 60% of the scholars choose the medical area. Straight MBBS at Mount Hope or the Doctor of Medicine at American universities. A number of our open scholars choose to go to Ireland. We have no moral authority over what they choose to do. We do think that because they see a difference between demand and supply, that more parents might influence their children to maybe think about a different career. As it is, once they choose to do their first degree, their MBBS, they return to us, they report to us, and we give them a letter to indicate that they have completed the first, their scholarship, and they hopefully get to do their internship with the Ministry of Health. But we really have no influence over the undergraduates, especially.
Thank you, and I hear you, but is there any sort of guidance that is given? I understand that they have the right to choose and so on, and I am not for one moment saying that we should try to take away that right, but is there any sort of guidance that is currently being offered or is being considered to guide these graduates? And just as, actually I should have asked this question first, can you indicate the number of scholarship winners in the field of medicine who are currently on place? I'm sorry, the reason I ask is because I know they have a 3-month, they allow 3 months in which placement is allowed. And just correct me if I'm wrong about this. And if they are not placed, then they no longer have to meet their obligations to the state.
I will not be able to give you a clear number at this point in time. We are aware that persons who graduated with their MBBS in 2016, some of them are still waiting to do their internship year, and because they cannot yet do it, they cannot register and be placed as doctors. We are presently in the process of receiving a whole number of those who are reporting in this year. We are looking, I think, at 148 persons coming back into us for their internship. Scholarship winners, open scholarship winners, additional scholars. Do remember that the cohort of graduates would be added to by those who were paid for by GATE, not just the scholars. So we are talking about several hundred persons graduating with their MBBS on a yearly basis from all the various sources. We also have, however, a slight misunderstanding. Generally, for all scholars, we are expected to try and place them within 3 months of their completion and reporting in. Those who studied abroad have 1 month to come back in. So let us say we have 4 months after completion, except for the President Medal winners. We have 6 months to place them. The persons who are not placed within the 3 months must demonstrate evidence that they have attempted to find alternative work over an 18-month period. And it is only after the 18 months and the evidence that we must issue a no objection to their moving out of the local jurisdiction. Yes? Within 18 months, they must seek a place locally, either in the public or the private sector. However, when it comes to the medical graduates, their choice of alternative places than the public health system is severely limited.
One more question, and I'm very concerned because in a field like medicine, when you finish your medical degree, if you don't go into an internship soon after, then you face certain challenges in terms of, getting your knowledge into practice. And with this in regard, has the ministry been looking at any opportunities, for example, within the private sector for placing those graduates who are waiting beyond a certain period of time? Is any consideration being given to that?
Well, we have very little authority over that. The new graduates must do their internship. After their internship, then they can become eligible for house officer positions. The fact that they are local hospitals, they are not really encouraging persons who would have just done 1-year internship to become house officers. They prefer more experienced persons. So the areas of contract that's out there in the private hospitals also very limited. So what we have seen is a number of scholars applying for what we call deferral of obligatory service, because they are obligated to serve for as much as 5 years. We spend over 600,000 and sometimes up to 3 million on training these persons. And after the 18 months or the deferral, they do get offers and they leave us to do specialty, obstetrics, gynecology, pediatrics, and we hope that they come back.
Sorry, if I could just tie this in to just one more aspect, and this comes under transfers, current transfers and subsidies, but it relates to the issue of subsidies to medical students, subsidies to Mount Hope students, and I note the decrease in the allocation. They have some $19 million plus, Madam PS. And the follow-up to that question would be whether consideration, how is that going to affect in terms of the intake, and whether consideration is being given now to having students from abroad, for example, who can pay to come to the medical school, non-nationals I'm talking about.
With the reduction, it would affect the University of the West Indies operations because they depend on the subsidy. There would have been an agreement in the past that we would subsidize, and therefore we really should be, this year we're trying to see if we could come back to the figure we're supposed to be giving them. So we are making a plug with budgets to organize that funding because it will affect the running of that faculty. The University of the West Indies can open their doors to anybody who's willing to apply and come to the University of the West Indies. It's not just for nationals. So if the university decides that, okay, we will, to be able to make ends meet, let's put it that way, they will increase the intake of foreign students, it is up to them. But we will try and meet our obligation to them for the students that we are sending there.
Member Coffey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are we still under Infrastructure Development Fund?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to ask about the early childhood care and education centers. Now, you say 4 are still to be completed. Could you identify those 4 centers that are still incomplete?
Ms. Henry David will provide those details.
So the 4 that are under construction that we hope to finish will be Egypt Oasis, Marabella, Wallerfield, and Springvale SDMS.
Okay. And you have continuation of one, which is the one?
Bellevue. That's DB Long Circular Bellevue.
And payment of final accounts for 3?
St. Sylvan's, Chinapoo, and Kunjal.
I know of at least one center. I was trying to see whether it's under construction, nearing completion, or continuation, that no work is going on, and that's the one at La Hokata. And I am trying to understand what's its status.
La Hokata. If you will indulge me, I can check to see, but we have had a number of early childhood centers which were at varying stages of completion, but because of budgetary constraints, among other things, we have not been able to schedule the completion of all of them at the same time. So we have had to do some prioritizing.
Okay.
So we would have prioritized in view of those areas with the most demonstrated need.
Okay, no, that's fine. What I'm trying to get is, you list those that are going to complete construction, and then continuation and payment of final accounts, right? Mm-hmm. But, so, I assume that there are centers like the one at La Hokata that are more or less complete that aren't listed here. How many of those are there, and what is their status?
I think that is something that we would have to provide a listing for you, because it would be quite a number.
So that where the buildings are complete and...
Not necessarily complete, but at varying stages of completion. So some may be as complete as 95%, others may be 20, 30, 40% complete in terms of that continuum for construction. And as I said, because of the budgetary constraints, we are unable to complete all of them, so we've had to prioritize.
Okay, but they aren't listed here.
No, they would not be, because the 5 that are listed, the 4 for completion, the 1 for continuation, the 3 for final accounts, those are the ones that we prioritized based on the funding that we were allocated for this fiscal.
Okay, thank you.
Member Boudou.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam PS, if I may just ask a few questions with regards to the IDF, the Infrastructure Development Fund, and to note that the allocation for 2017 would have been 511 million thereabouts. Can you indicate to this committee what percentage of that amount has been spent so far for the fiscal year? Would you be in a position to give us that information?
I believe we will have to provide that in writing for you, sir. We are not in a position to give the total. We might have some information on certain areas, but not across the board. So, crave your indulgence. Please.
We'll take that, but any rough estimate in terms of a percentage, perhaps?
What do you want to...
Whilst I wait that, perhaps in the interest of time, I could also ask, with regards to a list of environments that was made for fiscal 2016, I note from your submission a transfer of funds of some 93 million plus, which would have been moved from UTT main campus, Tamana E-Tech Park, to various other projects. Can you explain the rationale for this environment? What would have been the reason and how it was?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the rest of the question. The rest of the question?
No, the rationale for the environment and how was the decision made to carry out this environment?
UTT.
That is a transfer of approximately 26 million from the UTT terminal project you're referring to?
My information here is some 93,888,285,000 dollars.
So the UV terminal project got an allocation of $120 million. The UTT projected that they would have started to utilize that fund in June 2017 because they had some alternative source of funds to take them to June. So the ministry at the time in December was looking to source funding to do the December vacation repair program. And we were looking at utilizing 26 million from that vote. And our plan was to go back at mid-year review to get the 26 million back into the UTT vote for use later on in the fiscal year. Because the vacation repair program, the votes related to that, we did not have the funding required.
So in view of that, can you indicate then whether any improvement, refurbishment, extensions as listed to both primary and secondary schools, whether any work at all would have been done in the vacation?
Yes.
And can you,
work would have been done, and we have a detailed list in which we could provide.
Can you provide that for us? The schools and the work that was done?
What was expended, what was the cost?
Yeah, I'd be most grateful. Again, I need to come back to the ECCE, and can I ask the status of the ECCE, the school in VB Avenue in Avocat, which falls within my constituency?
Can I please ask if you will come back to it? I'll need to check.
I would appreciate that. And just if from the submission, I note that there are 3 projects which did not receive an allocation for fiscal 2017. That is the construction of the Shiva Boys Hindu College, the Parvati Girls Hindu College, and the Siparia East Secondary. And I also note that from your submission that students will continue to be housed in inadequate conditions for a protracted period. With respect to these 3 projects, can you indicate perhaps in writing where these students are currently housed and how long they have been housed at the temporary location, or if you can tell us that now?
Parvati Girls Hindu has been housed since circa 2000 at what was built as the new Debe Primary School. And over time, some additional facilities may have been provided, but ostensibly they functioned from what was built as a primary school. The Shiva Boys Hindu College, they are in a building that was, I think, a theological college that's down in Pinal, and as well they would have been provided with some additional facilities, but where both schools are housed, they were not built for purpose. So,
sorry, Siparia East Secondary.
Siparia East continues to be housed at what was the junior secondary school, Siparia Junior Secondary School.
Can you indicate the percentage, if I may, completion of each of these schools? How far along?
Shiva and Parvati are both at approximately 71% completion, and the Siparia East, well, about 30% completion.
30%?
Yes.
Can you explain why there was no allocation for 2017? Is it because there was no request made, or was it that the request was made and not facilitated by the government?
Requests would have been made, however, due to financial constraints, we were allocated what we were allocated.
Any idea going forward into the new financial year, what's going to happen to these 3 schools? By way of answer, can you indicate what kind of funding will be required to complete each of these 3?
We crave your indulgence for us to provide those answers in writing so that we'll be accurate in what we provide.
One final question. In terms of the utilization of facilities, I know some of these facilities may be incomplete, but the students at Superior East Secondary, I am aware that the multiple-purpose hall is almost completed, and you said that the project is still a long way from completion. Is it possible, or have you in the past given consideration to partially opening a facility, for example, at multipurpose hall, for the benefit of the students?
That has been done in very few instances that I can think of because of safety issues, and sometimes it's not so easy to hold off an area because from what's ostensibly a construction site. So I'm not aware that we have been considering that in this instance.
Member Coffey? Member Ambaraz?
I just have a question on, you made a submission dated December 20th, 2016. It deals with concerns related to inventory control. You have that submission before you?
I believe we have, I have a document, I'm assuming that is the same document.
Yeah, I'm just trying to follow the flow, just from my understanding. Now, there is a memo dated August 23rd, 2013, and this is a request from Acting Clerk 4 Office Manager Greg Cave Cooper. Do you have that?
Unfortunately, if it's an attachment, I don't have the attachment. So if you could tell me your concern, I'll try to get that
I'm trying to follow. On August 23rd, 2013, the request is made. The memo lists some problems with the Toyota Fielder wagon PBZ 8172 and refers to 3 quotations submitted. And there's a line at the end which says, please note that the Nissan X-Trail 2.5 Limited is our vehicle of choice should it meet with your approval. And then it follows with a memo dated 4th September 2013 from the Director of Finance and Accounts to the Permanent Secretary, which refers to that previous memo, identifies the 3 quotations, and the 3 quotations are from Neil and Massey Limited for an X-Trail, Classic Motors for a Honda CR-V, and Toyota for a Fortuner, and then recommends the recommended supplier of Classic Motors, though not the least expensive, but there is a lot of trunk space to accommodate the boxes of files and mails to be delivered. And then the remaining documents point to the purchase of the X-Trail, and not just one X-Trail, 2 X-Trails. So it moves from a recommendation from the Director of Finance to the PS for the Honda CR-V from Classic Motors to be purchased, even though it wasn't the lowest price and the justification is set out. But then from the remaining documents I see from 30th September, several notations on the file dealing with the acquisition of not 1 but 2 X-Trails, closing with, well, a lot of things happen on September 30th, 2013. It's a very busy day. But there are a lot of notations on the file, and there's an invoice to Neil and Massey Automotive for the supply of 2 Nissan X-Trails, and then the invoice order is attached. I'm not seeing a date on it, and there's the documentation showing that the payment and check collection information also dated 30th September 2013. So I'm just wondering from from an inventory control one and just general accountability, how does one move from the approval of a Honda CR-V with a justification to the acquisition of 2 X-Trails without, there's nothing before me which tells me how you went through that process?
Minister, I can't say that what I will say now is with 100% accuracy because clearly I wasn't there at the time, but I know sometimes depending on your funding, you tend to go with a good vehicle that will serve purpose. So I am going to be making an assumption that the PS at the time considered that the X-Trail will serve the purpose and given the funding, the cost of the CR-V, which is 240 compared to 198, her approval was to purchase, well, not 1 but 2. So we were able to stretch the money and get 2, because I'm seeing purchase of 2 X-Trails. The PS approved it as at the 16th of September to purchase 2 X-Trails, which
with all due respect, I don't think it is convincing to say that given funding constraints, you decided not to buy the $240,000 CR-V and instead buy 2 X-Trails at $400,000. I don't think that is convincing.
I be putting myself in the shoes of the PS, which mightn't be the right thing to do. I would say if I had $400,000 and I have a proposal to purchase 1 vehicle that is costing $240,000, but I can get 2 vehicles for the $400,000, I might decide to purchase the 2 vehicles. But as I say, I cannot say what was in the mind of the PS at the time, but she did approve. At the time, she approved the purchase of 2 X-Trails.
But then the justification for the CR-V, which is, the justification was that the recommended supplier is Classic Motors, though not the least expensive, but there is a lot of trunk space to accommodate the amount of boxes of files and mails to be delivered, because the rationale for changing out from the PAZ 817 Fielder was that the vehicle is used for the distribution of mails and checks, and given the problems with that vehicle, they needed a new vehicle, and the recommendation was for the X-Trail 2.5, but the Director of Finance, in writing to the Permanent Secretary, makes a case for the CR-V, which is more than the X-Trail but less than the 429 price. And then I wouldn't say that availability of funds is an issue because you know, two vehicles were purchased.
I cannot speak for the PS at the time. However, as I say, if it's to deliver mails and, as you said, to deliver mails, I don't know how much that you require a vehicle with a massive amount of trunk space. You need a reliable vehicle to get you from point A to B, C, and X. So I would think that I would consider having a reliable vehicle, and if I can get 2 out of the money for 1, the price of 1, the overall needs of the ministry must have been taken into account to decide that, okay, if we could get 2 vehicles with the price, well, almost the price of 1. And clearly we had the funding, and I'm saying, because I'm seeing all the approvals for it, the PS would have made a decision accordingly.
Well, would you undertake to provide the clarification for the committee?
Okay, I will try, but as I say, the PS who approved it at the time is no longer in the ministry, and I will have to do a lot of digging to see if I could come up with a justification why we went with 2 X-Trails and not 1
Yeah.
One.
Would you at least, because
Honda.
I feel obligated because the document, I mean, if the documents weren't placed before me, I would not have been in this position, but the documents, this has come before me based on a submission by you. You have submitted this before me.
Yes, and
So
I
now you have
submit
put,
an approval.
on behalf of the committee, you have put me into the position of asking the question, and I understand that you were not personally in the ministry at the time, but I feel constrained to ask for an explanation based on the paper trail that exists in the ministry and the recollection of the persons who are still available, an explanation for what has been placed before the committee.
I'll try my best to provide that information to the committee, sir.
Just to PS, might I ask, following from that question, what are your funding levels to date? Because as you indicated, for acquisition of vehicles, none. So there's been no expenditure to date?
This year?
Yes.
No, we have not purchased.
None. And there are no plans to purchase? And there are no plans? Okay, and there are no plans to purchase for the balance of this fiscal year?
For the we have no allocation to purchase motor vehicles for this year.
Okay, but almost I get the impression from your response that if you had money left, if you were in that position and you had money left at the end of the fiscal year, regardless of what your justification was for acquiring, you would acquire as many as you could. I think that's where it was going.
Well, I cannot say what was in the thinking.
Yes.
But I could say no in 2017. If I had money in that vote, and I look at the fleet we have, I might be looking to use the money elsewhere.
Okay, so does the thinking then, for that statement, is that informed by, if I have the money, I'm going to spend all? Because that's the impression the expenditure taking place on the 30th is as if I have the money, let me expend all.
But the approval wasn't on the 30th, eh? If I recall, it's on the 6th. It was earlier in September. The actual expenditure might have occurred on the 30th. As I say, I cannot assume to know what might have been the situation. There could have been other vehicles that might have been down, and there might have been need for more than one vehicle, and you're trying to maximize the amount of funds you have. I will do the research and try and provide an explanation, but I would not think it's just a matter of the 30th of September is coming and you spend all the money. Right. Because there will be other needs in the ministry, and you try to see how we can match.
Okay, thank you. And just before I invite other members, I just want to ask two questions on fees. This is 001 General Administration, sub-item 23. In the submission, there was a statement that the vote will be exhausted as of the end of April 2017. And this would be fees for CXC, SCA, for the continuous assessment component, for the General Certificate of Education. The vote will be exhausted as of the end of April 2017. A reprioritizing of allocations from other subheads will have to be done to identify savings in order to facilitate transfers into this vote. So what I'm asking is, has that reprioritizing taken place? And from what votes with transfers have been done to ensure that your deficit in fees has been met?
The actual reprioritizing and looking for which vote what we might be able to, that has not occurred as yet.
Yes.
Our DFA just came back out from leave, and as I say, we are in process right now of looking where we can get the money to meet the expenses before the end of this financial year.
What impact, if any, if you didn't get to plug the deficit, what impact or consequences follow for these fees?
Next year. Unfortunately, I don't know that we have a choice, we have to find it, because it will be, we'll be going into a new financial year with a commitment, which is only going to make us worse off next year. So we really have to search high and low to locate funds from other votes, and that exercise we will start, because as I said, we are doing a review of the entire estimates right now.
Yes.
So we will have to do our best to try and locate that fund, so that it doesn't go over as a committee.
All right. You expect your process of identification to take roughly how long?
It all depends on if a bill come in, we will look for the money for it to cover that bill, because we don't want to move in plenty in there. Next thing we have somewhere else that need again. So we will move in as we need. We will look and move in there. So if we have a bill in hand now, we will look for money to put in there.
Okay, so then therefore maybe what we would do is we'll invite you all back before the commencement of the new fiscal for some sort of reporting on what has happened with reprioritizing the areas where you would have had this deficit where you had to fill. And under minor equipment purchases, in the mid-year review, you had got some $60 million plus more. And I believe earlier you all had said this was for ICT. Yeah, but this would only be for Forms 1 and 2. Am I correct?
Forms 1, we have a slide, Form 1. Where we will be, it's not going to be as previously where it's student gets. We're going to have, it's to purchase laptop and batteries actually, and it will be a shared equipment that will be shared in the school, stored securely in the school. So we're looking at Form 1 this coming academic year.
Okay. What I really wanted to find out, and that's why I wanted the clarification, there is expected to be online examinations, so that would be CXC. In terms of, and that's supposed to be 2018, in terms of acquiring the equipment, because I think it's something like about 18,000 students. In terms of acquiring equipment for that exam, and in terms of, say, ensuring that your centers will be Wi-Fi ready and so on, would any of that funding have been in your allocation for fiscal 2017?
Yes, I think yes. The preparation of the schools for the e-testing would have been factored in, whether we factored it in our 18 estimates.
Yes.
What we will get, I guess we will see, but we plug in very hard. We had discussions to explain that we have to go e-testing, so we really need the funding for that.
Yeah. You're talking about fiscal 2018?
Yes.
But I'm asking if any of that was factored into fiscal 2017. What I'm really trying to find out, if it would have come under this minor equipment purchases vote, and whether it would have been affected by the deficit.
Not under the minor equipment vote.
Any other vote?
Yes, we would have had it in another vote. I'm sure it's not under the minor equipment vote, but I could get that information on which vote but I am pretty sure we would have had a vote, but right now, sorry, it is not coming to mind.
All right, okay, so that if maybe you could therefore, PS, respond to that and let us know if that vote was impacted and how it affects your anticipated status for readiness for the e-testing in 2018. Okay? Thank you very much. Member Mark.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Chair, if you may indulge me, or if I could indulge you for a few moments. I want to revert to an earlier point made by Dr. Bodo. It has to do with the internship. I wanted to ask the Permanent Secretary if you could share with us what are some of the factors that might be negatively impacting on those persons who have been on scholarships and they have been able to successfully navigate in terms of their medical degrees, but are unable to access that one-year training program, which is so vital for them to become house officers within the medical system. Do you have any idea as to what are the factors that might be inhibiting that progress, or those persons' progress?
Well, the placement of our returning scholars, as well as those who would have done it on their own through gate funding, really is to get us positioned as intern. It's really under the Ministry of Health and the regional health authorities.
Okay.
We have little or no control over that. We provide them information how many scholars would be returning. We also provide them information how many persons on the gate funding would be returning. But the actual placement of an intern for that 1 year, it's Ministry of Health and the RHA. And beyond that, the employment as a house officer is also in the hands of the Ministry of the Regional Health Authorities.
All right. May I also ask, Madam Permanent Secretary, you spoke about recovering some $2.4 million from persons who may have breached their scholarship obligations. Could you tell us, for instance, how many persons who are involved here and what kind of scholarships would be involved?
Dr. Hodeb could provide some of that information.
Let me clarify that we are now up to 3 million as at the end of June 30th. Right. Many of those persons aren't necessarily in breach. They have simply chosen to repay. The number of persons who are in breach cannot be provided at this time because it is a continuous exercise. I have a small breach unit and a post-reporting monitoring unit that is constantly in touch with scholars who may not have reported in when they were supposed to do so, or who did not complete their obligatory service and left the country or left the placement that they were in without informing us. When we find them, in terms of, we send out emails to them, we send out emails to their guarantors, because the scholarship is a loan and a guarantor must co-sign with the scholar. And once they respond, once we find out and we have engaged other scholars to locate them and so on, we let them know what their options are in terms of repayment. So we do have a number of persons, and the majority of persons who choose to repay tend to be medical graduates.
Yeah, but could you not share with us, as at the end of 2016, what was the number involved in terms of those who allegedly would have been in breach prior to you discussing with them options available?
I wouldn't be able to give you a figure of the number of persons in breach. We have over 38 persons who have repaid thus far for this year, or who are in the process of repayment this year, because when they do, we sign a new agreement with them. But in terms of the number of persons who are actively in breach, I wouldn't be able to give it to you right away.
Madam Chair, through you again to the Permanent Secretary. I'm not too clear the name of the program or project. Some people call it the Laventil Mover project. Some people call it, I think, the School Improvement project. I just wanted you to clarify for us, where is that project located in the Ministry of Education? Is it under the development program? Is it under the recurrent expenditure? Is it under infrastructure development program? And what is the size of the allocation? As well as if you can give us understanding of the successes and challenges faced by that program.
I will have our project manager give you the details of, but basically answer most of the questions you have asked there. Ms. Chidi?
The Lavender Mover project, which is also called the School Improvement Project, was allocated $31.5 million fiscal year 2017. That allocation is being utilized to implement 4 components, main components, which is parenting and education, literacy, numeracy, and teacher training and development, promoting discipline in schools, and infrastructure upgrade and aesthetics at the school. Under infrastructure upgrade, a total of $24.5 million was allocated for the 25 schools. However, 2 of the schools has to be rebuilt, and that will be taken care of under the construction program. So essentially, we are upgrading 23 schools in terms of priority items like electricals, plumbing, sewer systems, roofing, whatever items are required in order to improve the school, keep them operational, and also to maintain some standards with respect to the various components in the infrastructure. In terms of progress to date, we have under infrastructure 2 phases where we selected a scope of works for each of the schools to be done in phase 1. All of phase 1 scope was approved and handed over to EFCL to implement. Out of the phase 1 works, approximately 14 contracts have been awarded at 14 schools for phase 1 works, and the remaining 9 is in tendering, various stages of the tendering procedures. In terms of progress, approximately in phase 1, 8 are 100% complete, and the rest are at various stages of completion. They are progressing now at a faster rate because the school, they have a lot more free time at the school now with exams, and then just now school will be closed. So we expect that the phase 1 works will complete by mid-July, We also have approved phase 2 works, which is the total scope for the upgrade works that we saw when we visited the site. And those works are being handed over to EFCL to be implemented over the July-August period. So we expect that the full $24.5 million would be utilized for the improvement program, and all of the schools would have some amount of upgrade works.
Now, the Permanent Secretary, the EFCL is responsible for dealing with this whole program in terms of the upgrading process, in terms of selecting, well, the tendering process and the selection of contractors would come from the EFCL. They would do that piece of work.
Yes.
And where these contractors would come from?
They have, EFCL has a list of pre-qualified contractors. Basically, we look for contractors in the area. So they will be using their pre-qualified list and going through for the contractors in that area.
Okay. Madam Chair, may I also ask, I have also noted that we have had some very prominent visitors to Trinidad and Tobago, and even some citizens from Trinidad and Tobago going into the community. Is that part of the program itself, or is that something outside of the program? I remember some chap coming from Harvard University or Howard University and having some lecture up there. Is that part of the program?
The program is as was explained by Ms. Chedi, it's not, that will not be part of it.
That would not be part of it. All right, thank you.
Member Bodo?
Madam PS, just a question on the development program with regards to the consolidated fund, where an allocation of 362,510,000. Can you indicate what percentage of that has been spent to date?
In terms of expenditure for the entire allocation, that will consist of a number of different projects from various divisions. And as such, we do not have the accumulated figure of expenditure, so if we can provide you the details.
Yeah, that would be fine. And if I may just look at, draw your attention to a project, which is a new project, Education Advancement Project, which is to commence officially in October 2017. And I see that is going to cost us 220 million overall. Can we perhaps have maybe just an idea of what this project is about?
Director Education Planning will provide some more information on that. Hopefully it will suffice.
Okay, so the EAP, or the Education Advancement Program, is an IDB loan-funded program which is currently being negotiated under 4 components. One component has to do with infrastructure, which deals with the construction of 5 early childhood centers in Tobago. Another component has to do with some research issues, as well as providing communications for all the areas related to the project. A third area has to do with provision of quality education. And the fourth area has to do with governance-related issues. So that would include areas such as the Education Management Information System and run some research on the technical vocational area. Earlier, we were asked about the consolidation of programs and so on, and that aspect would come under that component of the EAP.
Thank you. Can you indicate whether this project has been tendered out and whether a contractor has been identified?
No, we have not reached that stage as yet. As I said, it's an IDB loan program, so we are at the point where we are trying to refine the different projects that are recommended for inclusion under the program, and we are in the midst of having discussions with the Ministry of Planning to finalize the list of programs which will be included in that entire project.
Member Coffey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. PS, I'd like to direct you to page 58 of your submissions on effective compliance dealing with the scholarship issue. Now, it outlines how the scholarships are awarded, how the payments are made, but having been exposed to the problems scholarship awardees endure as a result of the non-functioning of all these things that you have mentioned here. Because even at the start of the last academic term, if I recall correctly, there were scholarship awardees going to the media, calling the ministry, saying that they were not getting access to their funds. So what I'd like to hear from you is, one, what caused the problem, and two, what mechanisms have been put in place by the ministry to ensure that this problem does not keep recurring, because it has been happening over a long period of time.
I would ask Dr. Honda to get into some of the details of what actually happened at that time. and then we could talk about what we put in place to avoid that in the future.
The process requires compliance by the scholars themselves to supply us with transcripts that show that they have maintained a 2.5 GPA at minimum, a status letter to show that they have registered or re-registered for their program, a request if they have chosen to change their program of study and they must wait for permission, a recognition that they may have in fact been overpaid and therefore they must pay back that overpayment before we continue payment. Sometimes the contract time at which the scholar signs their scholarship agreement is one that does not allow us to begin the payment immediately. The major problem therefore lies with lack of staff sometimes who may not be there to continue the conversation with the scholar until we send another support officer or we become aware that this particular scholar has not been responded to in a timely fashion. But most of the time it has to do with the scholar not supplying what they need to supply to us in a timely manner. If one scholar goes to the media and goes to the on the social media and goes to the newspapers and goes to the television, there is an occasion for people to believe it's a problem throughout the system. But in truth and in fact, we have improved. The majority of scholars are getting what they're supposed to get in a timely fashion. I must say that despite the fact that allocation is not where it used to be, we do get our releases for scholarships on a timely fashion, and we try our best to make sure that they get their monies on time.
Madam Chair, a lot of these calls come to me because the division used to be part of the Ministry of Public Administration before, and sometimes you hear the cries of parents, and they are unsure about the welfare of their children stuck in foreign jurisdictions. Sometimes they can't get access to their apartments, and I think when you are here in Trinidad and you have a scholar stuck in the UK or the US or some far-flung destination, we need to have some process where we minimize the level of hurt and discomfort that attends to these nationals who are scholars. And I am not sure we have gotten to that point yet, and I really would like to hear some kind. I know attempts were being made before, but we need to find some way to ensure that this does not keep recurring with our national scholars, particularly at the time. Some of them, it's winter, and they're not sure of when they're getting their funding from. And what I see here from the ministry does not address the problem. It does not recognize the problem, and I am still waiting to hear of a new initiative that would prevent that from happening on an annual basis.
Member, I just want to invite the PS, because I believe in response to your question initially, the PS had indicated Dr. Holder would talk about what occurred, and the PS will now address what new systems they're putting in place. So maybe we could invite the PS at this stage to make a contribution.
Now, we have been trying with the scholars abroad to try and pay 3 months allowances in one payment, so that it's not every month we have to go through this and they have to be worried. We try to pay 3 months in advance, well, not in advance, but 3 months together. So it turns out to be an advance for at least 2 months, if we pay in the 3 months together, right? And so that we would put that in place, we are hoping that it would avoid September coming with an issue, because we right now we had to do some movement of funds to be able to meet our payments so that we could make the payment up to the end of the financial year. Hopefully, with the 3 months allowance in your hand at one time, it will ease the pain by the time we get the next 3 months. But we are very cognizant of the fact that our scholars are out there, and just being out there it's an issue, and not being aware of when the funding is going to come. We accept that it will be very traumatic for them, and we are trying our best with that system, putting that system in place, to see if we could avoid the extra pains of waiting for payments. I guess it's a work in progress, and we may not get it right in 1 year, but we certainly would not like to have a recurrence of what happened last year.
Member Mark?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll just be quick. Madam Permanent Secretary, your project officer who just spoke mentioned, as I have it here, again in the school improvement program, she spoke about 14 schools and 14 contracts being issued thus far. Could she provide in writing, through you, to the chair, the names of those schools, and could you submit the names of these 14 contractors? You also indicated that there are 9 other schools and tenders to be issued. I don't know if you can indicate us if there's a time frame for that, or whether, for instance, when you are submitting in writing the information that I have requested, that you can make that available, because the work has to go on between July and August based on what have been submitted to us. So we would welcome that submission. And I saw, Madam Chair, a very excellent project called the International Find Cocoa Innovation Center, involving some $4.5 million allocation, but it requires a cabinet note to be finalized and submitted. Could you tell us, for instance, if that note has been finalized and submitted?
The note has been prepared, but it has not been finalized.
Well, given the fact that the financial year is coming to a close, and this is a very important project, could you tell us when that note will be submitted, and whether, when that note is submitted, funds will be released for this very important project?
I would not be able to say when the note will be finalized for submission to Cabinet at this point in time. It was put forward, and we are having discussions on it, so I can't say yet.
Would you advise whether this project will die?
No.
Or will it live?
It will not die.
No, I'm talking about for this fiscal year.
No, they got their money, funds were allocated that they can use for this year. We were looking to get additional funding. Right. And I am being reminded that we did not have cabinet approval to use the funds, but we had funds allocated. So we will push to see if we can get the approval so that the funds that have been allocated can be utilized, and we could probably, I think, be trying to get additional funds for the project for next fiscal.
Yeah, and finally, Madam Chair, I noticed in the Infrastructure Development Fund where you had, I guess you wired or transfer, as it said, some $93.9 million from the UTT. Is it UTT?
Yes, sir.
That would be
yes, I think it's UTT.
allocation.
Yes.
UTT was allocated $120 million. We wired $26 million from that to the votes related to the vacation repair program in order to do the December vacation repair.
Yeah, but
So the allocation under the UTT main campus will be 93 million, 93 million. I don't know the exact figure, but it is 93.
so that sum that has been allocated would go towards primary, secondary, and
Right.
special
Well,
education.
The 93 million will remain on UTT campus for their usage to September 30th, and the 26 million was transferred to do repairs at the primary, secondary, and ECCs.
You have any idea, could you provide us, Madam Permanent Secretary, with the schools that are going to benefit from this $26 million allocation under Project B, primary, under Project Group C, secondary, and under Project Group E, special education? Both repairs as well as furniture and equipment for repairs and maintenance of special schools. And in the case of the secondary, you have improvement / refurbishment as well as extensions, both at the primary and second. Could we get the names of these schools?
Yes, we can,
Thank you.
because this was utilized for the December 2016.
Oh, that was for 2016?
Yes, sir.
Yes, could you still give us the names of those?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam Chair, I'm okay.
All right, Member Rambura.
I just want to follow the question Dr. Bodo raised on the education advancement program. And I was looking at the notes. So this is said to be a follow-up to the Seamless Education System project. Now, the note also says that the Seamless Education project closed on December 2015. Now, the expenditure on that project, Seamless Education System project, the expenditure for fiscal 2015 was $126 million. Now, and this new project is estimated to cost $220 million. Now, I wanted to know what evaluation or what that Seamless Education System project involved. What evaluation has been done on that project against the targets or the objectives of the project? What was the total cost of the Seamless Education System project, which started in 2009? And what is the justification for this new project, the Education Advancement Project, and the $220 million cost?
Okay, so starting somewhere in the middle, I will not be able to give you the total expenditure on the Seamless Education System project at this time, so we'll have to provide that response in writing. What evaluation would have been done? There would have been an evaluation report that was part of the project that was done close to the end of the project by external personnel who were hired and who were contracted to carry out that exercise. And in the main, though the project was supposed to encompass the construction of 50 early childhood care and education centers. I believe about 24 of them were actually completed. The project included the reworking of the curriculum, and I think I would let the Director for Curriculum speak to that aspect of the project. There were also certain aspects of it included institutional strengthening of various divisions of the ministry, and in the main, that part of the project did not happen at all. We had, in addition, some projects related to provision of materials for training of persons in the new curriculum. We had the provision of steel band ensembles as well as the other activities related to those ensembles that would have been provided previously, so like tuning of the instruments and so on. There was a component that dealt with communications.
And are you able to say what that evaluation report said about the achievement of the objectives of that program?
Well, as I said, in terms of the physical infrastructure part of it, that was just under 50%. So the evaluation report would have recorded what the successes were and where the failures were, and within the program, a lot of the actual individual projects were discontinued or did not start at all, and those would be largely related to institutional strengthening. So there was supposed to have been persons working with different divisions, and they were supposed to be having some measure of training that did not take place. I would let Ms. Kim-Chan speak to the curriculum aspect of it so you can get an idea of what did and did not happen.
I'm going to speak a little bit generally about the objectives of the review of the primary curriculum, and if there's any further questions, you can always let me know, because it's a massive thing. So I'm trying to focus on what I think is significant. If I can just say, in terms of evaluation that you're referring to, each of the components of this project under the Seamless Education System Project Loan had individual measures of success and indicators and so on generated in conjunction with the bank, and each of those would have been measured towards the end of the project to ensure that continuity and levels of success were documented. Yeah, so the review of the curriculum really focused on the primary, and just to take us back a little bit, the previous existing curriculum documents at the primary level had been generated between 1998 and 2004. So we were looking at datedness of the curriculum, both in terms of content as well as, and more significantly, I think at this point in time, in terms of pedagogy, in terms of teacher methodology to treat with the demands of education at this particular juncture in time. So the review of the curriculum encompassed a comprehensive reworking of the curriculum, focusing on 9 subject areas. I don't know if you'd like me to list those for you.
What I would like to know is, in terms of what the Seamless Education System project set out to do in relation to the curriculum aspect of it, has that been completed?
It has been completed in some parts, and I'll explain in detail to you. So the review of the curriculum, the production of the documents, and it entailed actually 23 curriculum documents, including guides and support documents, that was completed. Orientation of teachers to the use of the new curriculum, which took place progressively from its introduction in September 2013 to the most recent, and it was phased into the school. So on a yearly basis, the group of teachers at the primary level that would have been responsible for implementing the new curriculum at the new year level, starting in Infants 1, Infants 2, and Standard 1 in 2013, phased into Standard 2 in the following year, phased into Standard 3 in the following year, and we are currently at implementation in Standard 5. Those teachers were oriented to the new curriculum where that is concerned. We have treated with the institutions that provide training of teachers on a longer term, the Bachelor of Education providers, alignment of those programs in preparation of teachers for the primary with the requirements of the pedagogical shift that we're talking about, that moves from focus on knowledge and rote learning to deeper learnings, and concept formation is a significant part of that. Almost complete. We have one institution that we're still in the process of helping them to align their programs with it. There are a couple of aspects still in terms of transitioning of the recording documents that teachers use to plan their schemes of work and so on. That is still in process because we have engaged our stakeholders over the last few years and trying to ensure that all our stakeholders, including the unions, including principals associations and so on, are on board with what we are requiring teachers to do. That too is in progress, has encountered some glitches as we have gone along, but we continue to work at it. Those are the broad areas under which that review functioned, and I believe as I would have gone through, I would have mentioned levels of completeness. I need to say too that one of the major pieces of it was resourcing of all primary schools with manipulatives, consumables to focus on an activity focus for the students involving the 9 subject areas. So for instance, in the area of phys ed, it would have been phys ed equipment, art and craft equipment, that kind of thing. That was completed a couple of years ago as well.
Okay, thank you. The second part related to the education advancement project and the extent to which it is a continuation of this seamless education system project.
So, as I said, one of the components for the EAP would be the construction of the early childhood centers in Tobago. That should have been a part of the original 50 that were supposed to have been done under the seamless, and the bank decided that they were no longer interested in funding any construction activities in Trinidad. But since Tobago did not benefit, they would continue that aspect of it. Let me see. There was some, as I indicated before, a lot of the institutional strengthening aspects were left out, and there is the attempt to negotiate with Ministry of Planning at present to include some of that would have given support to the programs that were done in the seamless. In terms of early childhood as well, we focus on construction before, so part of the focus of the EAP would be strengthening of systems to ensure quality, and in Trinidad and in the Tobago aspect of it would be orientations, provision of information to the Tobago public to sell the concept of early childhood education in the Sister Isle. So that's a continuation there. At this time,
thank you.
We can provide more in writing, but.
Dr. Bodo, and I just asked members, I know we could spend the whole night here with the discussion, but having regard to the time, I'd just make the point that all other questions can be sent in writing. Okay? Dr. Bodo.
Thank you, Chair, and I keep that in mind. Just 2 questions. One is just a follow-up with regards to the Seamless Education System project and the Education Advancement project, and that has to do with the issue of the national testing that is done in primary and secondary schools. And the question is, has any assessment been done on these tests in terms of whether they provide value for the money that will be spent on these tests?
Mr. Kempchan will provide some information on that aspect, please.
there is tremendous value to be gained from testing at any level of the system and the data that provides, levels of student performance, areas of weakness, areas of strength, which are all used to determine areas of further intervention. And over the last decade that testing, the national test, has been administered in our country, the data has been prolific and very, very well used by personnel of the Ministry of Education to plan for further interventions, areas of support
I'm sorry to
that are
interrupt you.
required.
So your answer is yes?
Yes.
Can you indicate how long it takes for the results of these tests to be made available to the schools?
The domain of that testing lies with the Division of Educational Research and Evaluation. Unfortunately, personnel is not represented on the team here, and I would not want to venture an answer in terms of months or so at this point, but we can
perhaps we can have
you.
that answer in writing.
Certainly, we can get that information to you.
And the second question really is just to go back to the Infrastructure Development Fund. And on the primary schools, I've noted, and perhaps you could have this in writing, I've noted that in the 2017 allocation, there are several schools which have not, where there were no allocations. The Lengua Presbyterian School, the Monkeytown Government School, the Barako Astra School, the Fabo Government School, and the Arima Hindu School, Arima Hindu Primary. The question is whether these schools have been completed. Would that be the reason why there was no allocation in 2017? Or if not, can we have a status on each of these schools, perhaps in writing?
In writing.
Or if the question could be given as we speak.
I can give it now. Okay. So starting with the end first, Arima Hindu, I believe that one was started. It might be about 30% complete. The other three that you indicated Lengua Press, that one was completed. We needed funds for final accounts. Could you just remind me? Fabo was completed as well, so any funds there would be for final accounts. And Monkeytown Government was also completed, and any funds there would be for final accounts.
A follow-up as to, with regards to the Arima Hindu, which is 30% complete?
I think, don't quote me on that. I can check the percentage completion.
All right.
But that one definitely was not completed.
All right. And any idea going forward how we're going to treat with this?
As Ministry of Education, we would like to complete all of the schools that we have because we have an aging plant, and at least 60% of our schools are over 50 years old and need to be replaced. However, because of financial constraints, we have had to schedule, we have had to prioritize, and we will have to see if we can schedule Arima Hindu in next fiscal or the fiscal after that to ensure that it is completed and ensure the children are housed safely.
And just one last question with regards to the Siparia Union Presbyterian School. I know that $8 million was allocated in 2017. Can you indicate how much has been spent and how close we are to completion of the school?
Member, could you take that in writing, please?
Sure.
That one in writing, please. Thank you. I just want, Madam PS, because I appreciate the time. I just wanted to find out about the UTT campus, the Tamina Itep Park. Earlier in the discussion, we had seen that some 93 million had been vired. In terms of your submission, I've seen that in terms of the infrastructure, 97% of the work has been completed, and in terms of the building, 81%. Okay, somewhere in my mind, I thought that this park was supposed to open in June of this year. Am I correct in that?
Chairman, the project itself, because of financial constraints, is scheduled to be completed in phases. The first phase for July, and the second phase for the end of at the end of the year,
calendar year.
2017, the calendar year.
Yes.
Yeah, it is, the percentage completion there is approximately 82% right now, and they're working towards that schedule based on the allocation. The 93 million you saw that was for the last fiscal year.
Yes.
Because UTT had alternative sources of funds that they were utilizing, and they did not utilize the allocation. So we took the opportunity to transfer that to an area where we needed it for the repair programs for the schools.
Okay, thank you very much. So I just want to understand what I'm seeing here. This is in, I think, Appendix 16. If we look at infrastructure work, we have cost of contracts issued by UTT is $101+ million. Among certified and paid to September 2016, $44 million. So is it that no payments have been made since September 2016?
Okay, within 2016, there was an issue regarding audit of UTT, the projects accounts, and what had happened is that only $6.1 million was released on the account, and when it was completed, UTT got other alternative funding to utilize, internal source of fund to utilize to September, and that is why we did not utilize from the allocation from last fiscal year.
Yeah.
And they continue to utilize from that alternative source this fiscal year, and therefore they will only be utilizing the allocation from at the end of this month. They will be applying to utilize the current allocation.
So in terms of the amount certified and paid to September 2016.
To September 2016.
Okay, the payments after September 2016, those are the subject to the audit?
No, it was before.
Excuse me?
The payments before.
Before? So that all of those are subject to the audit and not being paid?
Actually, what had happened is that it was completed and the payments were made. However, they were not made from the allocation.
Right. Yes, okay.
They were made from an alternative source.
And does that apply to also the signature building and the consultancy services?
Yes, it applies to all of the entire project, which include the signature building and the plant and the external works. And I have an updated report which I could give to the committee.
Yes, please.
And this report is 2 June 2017.
All right. So that UTT from its own other sources of funding should be in money to pay meet all certified payments.
Yes, they had there, and they made those payments.
Okay, thank you very much, and we'll welcome that report.
Yeah.
And Madam PS, the last question I have for you, and it's a two-part. How many PSs and deputy PSs are in the Ministry of Education?
Right now, the establishment provides for 2 permanent secretaries and 3 deputy permanent secretaries.
Yes. And are all the positions filled? Well, and you are an acting PS?
We have 2 acting PSs and we have 3 acting deputy PSs.
Okay, thank you. And could you...
Oh, I'm sorry, and one as recent as Friday has been assigned to the ministry from July 10th.
So you're back to 2 acting PSs and 2 deputy
deputies
PSs
and appointed
from the 10th of July. Okay, could you therefore submit to the committee, and I would say in writing, the areas of responsibilities for the acting PSs and the acting deputy PSs?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I really want to thank the representatives of the Ministry of Education, Madam PS, and your other supporting officials for the time that you've spent here with us to enlighten us about the workings of the Ministry of Education under the various areas of this inquiry. It is now 6:27. I want to also thank the members of the media who've stayed with us and the members of the listening public. Usually, PS, we ask for a closing statement, but I would wish to waive that at this time unless you really would like to make a closing statement.
It's not a closing statement.
Yeah.
I got some information about the leak, the 2017 leak, and it was what I was informed that it was only rumored in the CXE mathematics that there were no leaks, and that the minister at the time and the CEO, the day after the rumors came out, had a press conference and indicated that based on the investigations, there was a conclusion that there were no leaks. I'd like to have that on the record.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This meeting is therefore now suspended. I wish the PS and the other officials a safe journey home. Thank you very much. Pleasant evening.
Thank you very much for having us, and thank you to my team, and safe journey home to the committee.
Thank you.